actually a Tuesday. This is Trekland HQ, and we are live for the 300th time. My guest is Doug Drexler today on a special edition of, Trekland Tuesdays Live, number 300. Oh, where will we be? We've got our skitsy, yes, number 300 with me, Dr. Trekland Nemecek, bringing you some clarity, sanity, and the big picture in Star Trek. And boy, today it's an even bigger picture than usual. So I want to thank all of our regular TTLers for being here with us on another Tuesday, for wherever you are around the world. All of you special folk who are in, because, we're giving away a Strange New Worlds Blu-ray DVD today. A Blu-ray DVD. Is that a misnomer? This is exciting for everybody who commented on the YouTube channel. You'll know who you are. But most of all, let's just get right to it. Let's bring in our guest for today. You know him. I love saying this for so many folks in Star Trek. I get to say the Emmy-winning, the Oscar-winning, Rabbit Bugs, but no, the Oscar-winning my buddy for so many years and contributed so much to Star Trek and science fiction and visual effects and just the world of creativity. There he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Doug Drexler. Doug, thank you for jumping in with me. Special guest today for 300 episodes. Oh, and then if I'm going to be a real host, I would unmute you. Well, the chat is going to go crazy. You're with me?
Am I with you?
Yeah. Yes, you are.
I'm with you.
You're with
Let's
me
go.
all the way.
Engage.
Well, Doug, and just if anybody, now you guys, our TTLers have had they can see you all over the place, thanks to Zoom now, if not live shows and all that. What's been awesome and here, I'll throw these out here. If you need any, now I'm not going back to the 70s. You all should know, and Doug could talk about the storied New York empire. I always say the New York Trek Mafia when I think about the giant poster book and everything out of New York, and of course that store
and that convention, the first big convention. I was at that.
At the very first one?
Yeah. Gene Roddenberry ran the projector. Showing the first time I ever saw the bloopers. Very first time.
The first time you saw the bloopers was that convention, but he was running the projector?
Yes. Gene Roddenberry was running the 60mm projector.
Well, in the old days, if the projector was off and the crowd would get ugly and people would say, focus, sound.
I know. It's like we don't have that anymore,
Don't have that anymore.
The smoke wafting
people say,
through the projector
beam,
me. We don't have smoke either.
Well, you sent me a ton of things. I'm going to keep it simple because I want to talk about these days, but I also want to talk about some big picture stuff. But just to have some fun here, boom. You won your Oscar for makeup on Dick Tracy, right?
Yes.
And came to Star Trek as a makeup artist.
I couldn't wait. I ran across town as soon as Dick Tracy was done and begged Mike Westmore to let me in.
So here's so how did you make your mind up to jump over to art, illustration, and eventually visual effects and CG?
Well,
how did you decide to do that? And then how did you convince them to let you do it?
Well, I mean, makeup really wasn't my first love. It really was drawing and stuff like that and designing.
Okay.
And
says the guy with an Oscar for it.
And a pretty girl. Ann Archer. That's Ann Archer. No, I mean, as a makeup artist, I spent so much time on the Next Generation sets that it just gave me, I mean, there's a lot of hurry up and wait. It's like the Army. And it gave me hours and hours to just look at those incredible sets. And I was so blown away by Mike Okuta's graphics. I mean, they looked fantastic when you saw them on television. And then when you were able to look at them this far away, the closer you looked, the more obvious it became that Mike wasn't kidding around. Mm-hmm. That he really put a lot of thought into everything. And so I was just so blown away by that. And of course, the other thing I have to say is this environment, which is so creative, where you've got visual effects and you got art department, and you got makeup, and who wants to just stay in one thing? I don't, most people get a career and they keep it for 40 years or so and just do that one thing. I can't even imagine that with all the cool stuff going on. Plus, on a show like Star Trek that
Well, right.
goes for so long, you know everybody, you know.
You know
So
everybody, and people on the big projects. One of the great things about, and I know it's that way on the modern shows, and I want to talk about Picard, but even back then, all the departments would get involved. Mike Westmore and Bob Blackman and art department Herman and everybody would get involved when there was an interface.
well,
Like
the
there'd
thing
be
was
some alien with a thing, and you had to do the makeup into the costume with the visual, the
when we
live
were shooting
effect.
at Paramount back during the Paramount days, everybody was within walking distance of each other. Now a lot of stuff is being done. Well, it started with COVID, over Zoom. When we were doing Picard, we did a lot of Zoom meetings, which is, I mean, it works fine, but you don't get to have the, the silly, wacky practical jokes, and where you put each other on the spot, and I mean that kind of camaraderie.
You don't
really,
get these kind of moments.
Yeah, like people like that, John. There's John. Yeah. Don't mess around with John Eves. That guy's crazy. A real practical joker, and so am I. So,
but you're talking, we got Mike Okuda here and Jim Vanover and
yeah,
the late
and
great Anthony Fredrickson. Now, I see this. Who is the young woman here with
That's
you?
Casey Bernay. She came in. Don't get saucy with me, Bernays.
Boo.
I'm just stealing from Mel Brooks.
The best.
Denise had to take some time off there, so she was filling in for Denise in the office for a week or so. Yeah, but yeah, Gary Hutzel took that picture, and I mean, that was one of our that was a high watermark for for Deep Space Nine.
But I mean, that was the beauty of everybody being in the same room together, everybody looking at each other's tape in your department, especially.
Yeah, there's nothing like it, really.
Yeah. Well, so I'm still.
Oh, that's right. So you asked, how did it happen?
How did you jump from? How did anybody, like, we have an Oscar-winning makeup artist on our staff? How cool is that? You want to what? In 1990, what was it? What season of Next Gen was that?
Third season, beginning in the third season.
Okay.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I had seen Mike Okuda on stage before, and actually, even before they ever shot any footage at all, Bob Justin invited me to come out, and I just stayed with him all day long, went to production meetings and stuff like that. And he was talking about Mike, that because I was in New York at the time, and Bob says, well, our graphic artist is coming from Hawaii, so you never know. It came down to union problems, really, why I was in the New York Union. I had to get into the West Coast Union to be able to work on Star Trek, which is what Dick Tracy did for me. Warren Beatty really made that happen for me, and my partner, John Caglione, got us into the union out here. I literally begged Mike Westmore. I begged him, because I mean, look, I've been a Star Trek fan. I'm a first generation fan. I watched the whole first season in black and white in 1966, which is actually interesting to look at because they shot that show for black and white and color.
Knowing that they'd had a lot of
Yeah, I mean, if you take the contemporary show and desaturate it, take all the color out, it won't look anywhere near as good as the original series does. So anyway, Mike was amused, Westmore, the mics in my life. He was amused, and I became a pretty regular from third season, fifth, up to fifth season, I think, to the point where you really know everyone really well. And if you're a makeup artist, you live with the cast. The Enterprise D cast, I lived with those people, I mean, you're putting makeup on them and you're working to all hours into the night. And that's the other thing I got to say. There's no cast as funny as the Next Generation cast. The later it went, the funnier it got. So, well, anyway, I wanted to get into the art department, and I kind of, I was in the corridor. There was no Enterprise corridor, and a mic comes down the hall, and I didn't assault him, but I wouldn't know if there was any possibility of a way for me to slide into the art department. And he knew I was a geek by then. And I remember he looked down the hall this way, grabbed me dragged me down the corridor, opened up the holodeck or the hangar bay doors, and there was the shuttle, that full size shuttle that they had that had an interior and an exterior. I think they built it from the Star Trek V shuttle.
Yeah,
really beautiful. And you have to picture this, that the hangar bay 3, I guess it was, is fairly complete. There's no ceiling, but all the walls are there, all the markings are there. The shuttle is there, it's lit. We go up that hatch into the back, all the panels are going. Mike takes the pilot seat, I take the co-pilot seat, and you look out that window and you see nothing but Enterprise D. And you believe that you're on the ship. But the thing was that Mike doesn't want to be a geek out in the public, basically. So he dragged me into the shuttle so we could have this conversation about, being geeks on set. And I just realized that the two of us,
especially back then, you had to hide your.
You really did.
People thought out in the wild, out in public, you had to hide just every day. On Star Trek itself, it was still like, if you were too.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, especially when I was a kid, science fiction was not a thing. You were a weirdo if you like science fiction.
Right, but I'm talking about on staff. The minute something leaks, then they look at who are the fans on staff.
Well, I mean, at that point,
they never think about the vendors.
At that point, stuff couldn't leak onto the internet. There was no internet yet. What they were worried about was, like, I think that just recently, like $8,000 worth of uniforms disappeared over the weekend. One of Picard's chair was left in the alley and it disappeared. Someone that we all know snuck onto this stage and made videos in a uniform, things like that. So they were cautious. It's understandable. But I just remember that Mike and I are hiding in the shuttle and talking back and forth about this. And it hits me all of a sudden that we've recreated the scene in 2001 where the two astronauts are hiding from Hal in the pod, And I told that to Mike and we both burst out laughing. And that was like, I think from that moment on, we were like kindred spirits.
That was your bonding.
Yeah.
Well, but still, it's so unheard of for that kind of thing to happen. Now I remember something like when LZ Ward, who worked security for years, wanted to get out of security and wanted to get into editing, and he became an editor eventually. But that's like an upward moment,
that's
but a
awesome.
lateral.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he's been.
He was great. I mean, he was beloved, actually.
Yeah, but this is like a lateral move or something. That's for you to go from makeup to art like that.
Well, it's if you're on a show that just goes and goes and goes, and you know everybody, it's not impossible to slide sideways. Yeah. That's how I ended up in visual effects. Well, I was working in the art department. If Gary Hutzel or Dan Curry ran out of money for a budget for a model, I could come in and we could make a Klingon space station out of sewage strainers, So you get to know those guys. And then when CG started coming in, Gary saw me playing in, Lightwave in the art department. And that's right there is where my visual effects career started, because I felt someone standing behind me. I turned around and he's going, And a couple of days later, he comes in and says, do you think a guy like you could make a ship for a guy like me? And he actually borrowed me from Mike Okuda for a week. I went over to Image G and we built this thing together. And we really had a lot of fun. And I remember as I was leaving, I'm saying to him, gee,
which ship was that?
I think it was a Breen ship or something.
Okay.
I think it was the Breen ship. As I'm going out, I remember saying to Gary, I hope we get to do this again. That was fun. And I remember Gary saying, be careful what you wish for, because then Battlestar Galactica happened and he pulled me over there. So it's, being able to get into, it's one thing to have talent. It's also another thing to be a team player, to not be a diva, to understand that you're not there to prove that you're a genius. You're there to focus the vision of the producer, the director, or your immediate supervisor, like Mike. I'm not married to anything I do. If they love it, then I am married to it. That makes me happy. That's the whole job. And you have to have a really good attitude to move from department to department to department.
And hopefully everybody you're interacting with is in that same mindset too. And when you are, it's,
it really was a family. on those shows because we had all moved from show to show to show, from TNG to DS9 to Voyager to Enterprise. And you really, you see, I always liked television better than working on features because on features, they know they're never going to see you again, and throwing you under the bus is no big deal. But if you're together for year after
and you'll
year,
probably not see them. I mean, you'll see people that you want to work with, and hopefully you do. But as a mass whole, that exact group is probably not going to be interacting, good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, so
something really special
on these shows, we looked out for each other. Someone would call me, like the painter, and say, "Hey, Dougie, there's some labels missing from. I just thought you might like to know." You might not get that call on a movie because they barely know you. But when you're on a show where it's a big family, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Well, you're living together 9 months of the year. Hey, I just want to say real quick, everybody, since I jumped in, and this is a little bit different format today, since we've got the lovely and talented Doug with us. Your chat, just as a reminder, if you're in the chat room, I'm going to come back around to the chat questions. So if you say something for Doug early on, or me, or both of us, I'll come back around to it. But just to know, if you're here on Facebook, you're only seeing the Facebook chat comments.
Melanie, no, that's not true. It's not true, Melanie. I'm just reading your comment.
You have to tell me the timestamp on that. But if you're on YouTube and if you're on Twitch, you're seeing all the comments, and we will circle back around to them. I'll do the DVD Blu-ray at midstream or whatever. So we'll be a little bit. I am going to talk a little bit about the parent analytics, and I want to tie it back to Doug because I want to talk about what's going on in the world of TV and Star Trek and everything right now in a little bit, Doug. But because I know you've got opinions on that. And good. Uh-oh.
The hair.
It's too late. We're just a little late for Pi Day and Einstein's birthday. That was just last week. See, it's always entertaining with this guy in the frame. Yes, we'll circle back to that. What was I going to say? I wanted to set that out there for a PSA, but I also, Doug sent me a ton of photos. I can't use all of them, but this is a guy that I always talk about. I think I talk about Bob Justman and Gene Kuhn just because Gene died so soon, and because Bob Justman was with us for a long time, and so few people knew to take advantage. I mean, I tried to get him out on the stage and get him out. I wish we had Zoom 20 years ago so we could do Zooms with.
I wish I had a phone with a camera in it.
Yeah.
Bob was an uncle to us, and he thought of us as his children. And for people who don't know, he was like a producer on the original series and really, really made a huge difference in the show. And if you read The Making of Star Trek, you've read his hilarious memos, and Bob was always open to us. We idolized him and worshipped him, and there was just nobody like Bob Justman.
Well, I mean, Modernized, look at those titles, and like his title for most of the series was associate producer, which I always think of like Mary Richards. When I think of associate producer,
I hate Spunk.
What?
I hate Spunk. Yeah,
I hate Spunk.
Grant.
Yeah, but I mean, today we think of like associate producer as the lowest rung of 5 or 6 levels, but he was like the producer for the show.
We'd go to his house and he would pull out like banker boxes, and there'd be like piles of steno pads. He'd carry a steno pad with him. Whenever he'd get an idea, he'd jot it down. And he really was an idea guy. But as far as writing scripts, that wasn't really his thing. But he showed me so many steno pads with ideas for stories that were developed.
Yeah. I don't want to say, but I mean, in the light of day, as much as we love our heroes and icons and legends, Gene did not do right by Bob in a lot of ways. He did the original story for Tomorrow's Yesterday. The Air Force pilot. I always get Tomorrow's.
Return to Tomorrow.
And did not get credit for the story. Yeah, it was anyway.
Well, I mean, Bob always thought he should have had Fred Freiberger's position in season 3, and he should have. I don't know what happened there. By all rights, he should have had that. I mean, for all we know, Gene. Look, I'm just making this up. I have no idea, but maybe Gene didn't want the best guy for the job there because he was leaving the show basically, and would like to see it fail because he's not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he puts Bob in there, there's a greater chance it's going to work out. I'm just making this up. I have no idea why.
Or maybe Leonard Majlish wanted it. Yeah.
Oh, him.
Yeah. Okay, now we're starting to sound like the Trek Files before we get into this. But but then Gene did have Bob come back and generate, the next generation.
Yeah.
And so many of those decisions were, like Bob is the one saying, why don't we have a Klingon Marine on the bridge and it'll show how we've had peace with the Klingons or supposed peace with the Klingons.
Oh, man. I mean, I remember I was spending the day with him, and he was talking about the whole idea of Worf and how they didn't know if that was going to fly or not. He was very concerned about everything, whether it was going to fly. I mean, not that many people thought it was going to be successful. I mean, even Mike Okuda told me he thought they'd shoot the pilot and that'd be it. He figured that'd be the end of that, as a matter of fact, I remember going with Bob to a meeting with ILM, and they had done that shot in the title where Enterprise comes up under the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the observation lounge, and you could just make out someone walking across.
Right.
And I flipped out when I saw that. And I asked Bob, did they actually? And he was so happy because I think that was his idea. He pushed for that. And it gives you a sense of scale. Like I don't think I ever really had.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing shot. When we were doing the remastering on the Next Generation, we found the footage of the little guy walking across and it is like kid drew it. It's so primitive, but it works. So, you can't argue with it.
Did someone at ILM do that, or did Mike do the little?
No, I don't think Mike did.
Okay.
Mike did.
I was thinking somewhere maybe that was a collab. That may have been way too, enough headaches to do back at the lot without doing that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't him.
Well, I'm anxious to go. There's so much been said about the prior years, and I got to have you on Portal 47 sometime to really go into the weeds on a lot of stuff. But since we're so today focused, because we had so many years there where after Enterprise ended and the JJ movies were, I remember somebody getting up and leaving the screening for Star Trek.
Who was that?
But I mean, it was a shockwave. It was a real shock to the system. And I say I cheerlead for Star Trek. I'm not a yippie. I'm not a shill for CBS. But I want it to do well. And I know that we live in a capitalist system where if something is a bomb, that means it puts a stink on it. That's, no one's going to say, oh, this one didn't work. We'll turn right around and do this version 2 years later. So I'm always rooting for it to keep building and have future potential.
Oh, you could ask Mike Okuda when we were waiting to go in. I was really up for it and excited for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I got about 20 minutes in. I was so uncomfortable with some of the stuff they were doing. I just hit me all of a sudden. I'm like, I don't have to sit here and be uncomfortable, and just got up. And I think Mike and Denise thought I went to the bathroom.
The Sherry Lansing Theater at the lot.
No, oh yeah. The theater, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. But Picard, season 3.
I was gonna say, well, what? So we've had Discovery, we've had Strange New Worlds, we got the animated series out there. So, but a lot of the whole thing originally was we're not having people, old Trek folks. Now John works steady through. John
will tell you that when he went for the job, he took all of his Star Trek stuff out of his resume. Because if they thought you knew too much about Star Trek, there really was pretty much an embargo for almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
Not because they're mean. Well, maybe it's because they're mean. Hang on, let me get rid of this. Maybe it's because they're mean. Yeah, my phone.
Yep. Uncle Martin.
But really, the thing is that sometimes, I mean, if you don't understand the history of the show and you're really not a fan, your number one thing is to try to put your spin on it. And do your version in the way you think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
If you get someone like Terry Matalas, who's a showrunner of Picard, who is a geeky fan, and used to hang out in the art department with us on Enterprise and Voyager, and
when he was
through. Huh?
When he was Brandon's assistant, when he was Brandon's assistant, he had to sit in the chair.
He was like baby Terry. But when he came in, he wanted to do the Star Trek that he knew and loved.
Mm-hmm.
And he somehow worked it out so he could And one of the things he did was bring back people he thought gave the show a certain flavor. You know,
Yeah.
Michael Kuda's Elcar's graphics are so amazing. Why would you not want to use those? To me, it's mind-boggling that you would use them. I mean, and then look at the other beautiful thing that Terry did. Usually, from show to show to show to show, they throw out all the music that was done before, and they do a whole new score because, well, of course, this person scoring wants to do their own score,
Well,
and the producer's fine with that. But Terry, because he knows Star Trek, knows every musical cue over the last like 40 years that made you excited when the Enterprise came around the Earth and the sun flared behind it, or leaving the dry dock, or some of the tonalities from the Nebula in Wrath of Khan, the battle in Wrath of Khan. If you know where to put and Bob Justman was good at this. If you know where to put those musical cues, every fan on Earth is going to have a burst of sense memory that's like Nirvana, and that's going to be one terrific score when it comes out. It's going to be a beautiful collection of a lot of the great cues that you remembered and loved, and that
but smooth, but adapted in and modified with additional music put in.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Terry, man. Listen, Dave Blass, a production designer,
I was
grew
going
up
to say
on shows
Dave,
that we did, and he said to me, he said, I always wanted to work on Star Trek, but what I really wanted was to work with you guys on Star Trek. So since he was a big geek and Terry was like, yes, I mean, listen, we stood on the bridge and Terry Metalis had said it wouldn't be Star Trek without you guys. I haven't heard that. I don't think I've ever heard that from a producer before. Usually they don't give them a swell head. Don't tell them you did a good job.
Well, see, the best thing about this is, so there was a little bit of this with the JJ movies, but you know what? Since they were a Kelvin alternate universe, that was my saving grace. In the beginning, I was like, kiss it. Spock and Uhura. Okay, alternate universe. And then I came to be glad, because if they hadn't got onto that conceit, they would have done a reboot. I mean, a real reboot, and everything else would have been, oh, well, that's the 60s, 90s.
If I'm not mistaken, in the beginning, they were saying it was the Prime Universe.
Yeah.
And then when they found out that battle was not going to be won with the fans,
with the fans.
And that's how I came to peace with it as well. Honestly, I was going crazy in the beginning, and then it finally hit me. I'm going, okay, it's a multiverse. It's science fiction. Stretch it every possible way you can,
And then since it wasn't, anybody, if that was your first Trek, I say hallelujah. It did keep Star Trek in the eye for 10 years, and it was a great They cast it really, really well. And those are my two strong points. And it kept it, and it brought in new fans. And if that was your first Star Trek, I say power to you, hallelujah.
Absolutely.
You never forget your first.
100%.
But for anybody older, I was like, okay, well, I don't have to care, because it's not Prime. So it's not real. And then they didn't make but 3 movies. So then my guilt finally went away when I said, well, there's math. It's just math. You got 6 hours of this universe, and you got, 4,700 hours of the other universe. So where's your heart going to be anyway? When they didn't do a spin-off series or an animated or anything. So, but then it's a moot point, because Discovery comes back, and as I realize that when some people say canon, I think the whole ball of wax is canon, continuity. Why is it not a reboot? Why is it a continuation? And I realized that some people in charge, to them, canon, it's all about the conceptual stuff. And yes, Spock can have a foster sister that we didn't know of. If he had a half brother that we didn't know of for 30 years, they're all up with that. But the visual,
I never think
it's like visual canon has to be updated. I don't know, but anyway, but what's happened now is people they've got the message, but I think people, you have people that are still watching early Discovery going, this is supposed to be 10 years before Kirk and Spock, even with the allowances for updating the look. So what this Picard to me, I'm on a soapbox here. What Picard has finally, I thought Enterprise Enemy Darkly did this. I thought Trials and Tribulations did this, but
great.
What these last 2 seasons of Picard have done is say, okay, kids, this is how you make it for a 2020 audience, but you really just keep the same lines and the same guts. You just finesse how you're doing.
I totally Picard season 3 is a continuation of the
Mm.
Next Generation. Now I don't know about season 1 and 2. People are real mixed about, whether or not they are. Can you change universes in the middle of doing your show? It almost seems like it was season 3. I mean, even the title sequence is completely retooled.
Yes. And that's but so here, speaking of season 2, a lot of you worked on season 2, and I think some of the best parts that resonated with fans are. So here's the Stargazer, and I remember being. Let me do it full width. I remember being shocked that set, the bridge and some of the corridor wasn't used more than it was, and I'm thinking this has got to be built for something more than this 1.5 episodes.
Well, the thing, as far as I knew in the very beginning when we did Stargazer, it was going to be Stargazer all the way through. That it wasn't going to be the Titan. Titan came along later, the idea of the Titan. Unless I'm wrong there, I don't think so. Originally, it was because I remember my disappointment that it wasn't going to be the Stargazer. But then I realized later on that based on what was going to happen in the show, where the ship is getting chased and getting their asses kicked by the Shrike, you can't do that with the Stargazer. The Stargazer is like a capital ship. You would expect it to turn around and really make a good showing of itself, where the Titan seems much more vulnerable. And I think that you needed a more vulnerable ship to go against the Shrike so that they would barely have a chance. And I think it's the same with the Intrepid that shows up later, which is a more powerful ship than the Titan. So they're always like, it's like there was a line on Firefly. I vote for Run and Hide.
You can always go back to Firefly for great. Faster would be better.
But the thing I remember, the thing that I'm loving about all the ships that we have in season 3 and when we saw the Stargazer, the reaction of our beloved fans was through the roof. They had been going for a few years where Starfleet ships didn't quite look like Starfleet ships. And I've talked about this before. I think that unless you have people come in where it's in their blood and their DNA and they've been doing it and they know every bit of it like the fans do, it's not going to be the same. And often I have to say that you get a lot of the younger designers and visual effects guys are not Star Trek kids. They're Star Wars kids. So their aesthetic goes more towards that, where Star Trek ships are really, they're not so much science fiction, as they are science extrapolation, A Star Trek starship has something. We're visiting Matt Jeffries one day in his hangar, and he used the term aircraft logic. And Star Trek ships good Star Trek ships have aircraft logic. Good Star Trek ships, the closer the fans get to them, they see how they come apart, and they know what's underneath that panel, and they can count on it. And so I think for the first time in a long time.
And if you're totally new to a ship, exterior or interior, you still have that feeling that
Exactly. So it's like fans want to see that all the panels make a certain amount of sense, that there's a thought out pattern to them, that they can look for a phaser strip or phaser turret, or look for the warp core egress hatch, or the hydrogen loading ports, and fans look for that stuff on Star Trek fans.
Really?
But they love the aircraft logic. And if you could do a science fiction design where you're not that worried about it, or you could do a Star Trek design, and if you're not worried about that, it's not going to look like Starfleet. And I'll just never forget that first shot of Stargazer in season 2. Some of the stuff that was written online was like, made my heart go like that. It was good stuff. They're like, for the first time, we're getting, that's one of the things we brought back. And just like Mike Okuda's L-cars on the bridge, all of a sudden, I don't like a bridge that you go on and you can't figure out what it is just by looking at it. Any Star Trek fan can go on that bridge and dope out what everything does. It's not just a bunch of fancy squiggly lines and stuff. Like the JJ bridge in the first JJ movie, I couldn't make heads or tails of what it was. And Star Trek fans, that's being part of the club, knowing what everything is. You know.
Well, it's not just being somebody who's totally new to Star Trek. I mean, the beauty of whether it's the LCAR's detail or whether it's just the fact that here's the captain in the middle and the officers are around them. And after a minute or two, you figure out whether it's the uniform helps you with where they are. But the guys down front, guys and gals down front are obviously in the go, and and everybody around is all the brain power. I mean, but if you're totally new to Star Trek, and it's been a long time since I've sat and talked to somebody who sat and watched, but when it's clicking, it's not just the detail. Oh, look, here's the warp and here's the photons. It's, oh, that's that's the communications, that's the science person, that's the one of the
even if
weapons.
someone's just coming in, you have a subliminal sense of the
Yep.
organization,
And it just helps you faster get into the story when you realize that and it also at some level helps you respect, which is what gets back to what Gene said in the beginning. If they don't respect the universe, they're not going to respect. We're already trying to do crime and romance and war in the future in these, with purple people.
That's one of the things.
They got to believe the world we're in.
That's one of the things that Mike gave the ships. The sets were all beautiful, but when you look at the graphics and you look at the panels that each have a little capsule label on them, and you look at the panels, and he did such a wonderful job creating that stuff that it sells the whole idea that there's an organization behind this ship that makes it work. And the other thing I'll say about LCARs is that if you ask someone to draw the footprint of 5 other science fiction interfaces, well, I don't think anybody can. All right, how about 3? No, I don't think anybody can. How about 2? Draw another one. You can't. Almost everybody understands what the LCAR's footprint is. Just the idea that they called it LCARs was so awesome when the show started up. Library computer access retrieval
system. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Having everybody back. I mean, I'm going to parade some of these through here. So here's season 3. Here's the question. I haven't had Terry alone in a room. I've just tried to ping him on Twitter so far, but I love this. So I know the Ilios is a mythic figure, but Ilios 12, I'm like, so is this named after a planet? Is there a 12th? This isn't like
that I don't know.
That's what I'm waiting to get that. But anyway,
Terry will know that.
There's just there's the march, like you said, the marching orders for the Stargazer, and then here's your. See, we're just back in a world where you're doing this and people pay attention to it. That's the Titan.
Well, they pay attention to it because they know that if they go through it, it's going to be pretty close to what they want. We all speak. I speak the same language with the fans. I'm a fan. They love going through it and seeing that you know what you're talking about. Have there been any other shows that they've done that put out this kind of annotated tech images and stuff? Probably not.
I think people involved have it in their head, but as far as this is not just for fans. This is like, so now visual effects knows not to have a tractor beam come out of a phaser port or something, which has happened in the past. But I mean, it's good for internal. I mean, it's the old the old in-house.
But yes, and that's why we do it. But we also do it because we know that the fans are going to eat it up. Mm-hmm. Because we love it, Well,
there's the Titan, yeah. And you've had that's the cool thing about Modern Age is you guys have all been posting these, Dave Blass and you and Mike and up and down the line. People have been sharing this stuff, which just adds to, which in the big, all that you go. I don't know if you remember this, Doug, but there was a time when fans would say rah, 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 NBC and rah, 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 Paramount and But
at least they weren't against each other.
This may come as a shock, Doug, but early fandom really hated a lot of the powers. But we got to a point where somebody figured out, if we get people in the shows that knows what fans want, which generally makes it a better show anyway. But if we do that, fans are happy and we make more money. It's a win-win.
If you're going to be hiring people to come in who have a great track record and have made the studio money and they're offered Star Trek and they're not, I saw Jon Stewart Jon Stewart show, Daily Show, where J.J. Abrams was on.
Oh, I have that on speed dial.
It's
Yes.
classic. I mean, he's going, I really was never a Star Trek fan, and I hated it when they get all, philosophical. And Jon Stewart's like this, I think I stopped hearing you when you said you weren't a Star Trek fan. Why he gets the show?
I was like at home going, he knows there's a camera rolling, right?
But he's J.J. Abrams. He's had all these big successes. He's riding high. They're going to let him do what he thinks is right. But unless you really know the DNA, and unless the DNA is imprinted on you, you're not going to know what you're missing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the stuff that we were able to do in third season Picard, I don't think hardly anybody on any of the prior shows that they had been doing really eat, sleep, and drink that stuff. So they could do a ship and it won't have all the fingerprints on it. It should. And they won't even know. And they'll just wonder why people are mocking that there's 3,000 ships that are all exactly the same in that famous scene. How did that happen? But look what happened in season 2 when, Terry was starting to get his way, and we had a scene with a fleet by that crazy Borg ship. And Dave made sure that every ship was identifiable.
Mm-hmm.
And when the fans saw it, they were going wild, picking out ships and going, look, there's that class. Oh my God, people love that. I love that. Dave loves that.
And then even reaching out to like STO and our friend Thomas. And, guys there and bringing in some STO ships and making, so they're on fire. The STO gamers are on fire. It's like, Dave is like, I got 4 ships. I didn't have to spend money on them.
Yeah. Well, I've always liked 90% of, I'm not going to say 100%. I'll say 90% because it's bound to be something I don't agree with because I'm so opinionated.
Always say that.
But I love what they did. Great eye, they understand all the elements, and they were involved with, as a matter of fact, the show, it reminds me of Next Generation when Michael Piller was running the writing room. He was letting people come in out of fandom. That's how Ron Moore got started, and it's the same with design on this show. And that is really smart.
Well, I name drop Bill Krause and the original Titan that Sean Torigno did. This isn't updated from that, but it was in the animated. Yeah,
there's a model on the wall in the ready
room,
the conference room on Picard of that ship. So it's a whole different world these days. Boy, we were just lucky to have Dave and Terry there because
here I'm going to throw this in. So there's your Intrepid with the Waspy.
Right. That's my approval model for the Intrepid. It's a pretty ship, man. And the thing is, that was a fat one. Yeah. The thing is to take the basic rough idea and translate it into Picard aesthetic and technology and finish it off to the nth degree.
Yeah.
The things that, if you look, we try to standardize the nacelles for the new ships. Makes perfect sense. We try to standardize the bridge modules. As a matter of fact, it's the same bridge module from Stargazer too. And that's the way these Starfleet ships are made to be hot swappable. That's the whole idea.
It's the synergy of how do you explain it from the old days using the same set pieces over and over. Well, look, that's what I call texture, not trivia. It's like just make a reason. It's not like, oh, look, they're low on budget or they didn't have time. It's like, no, there is a real world reason that you can make any of this makes sense if you just stop and think. Because the real world is not out of a mold.
It made more sense for them back then because they really were so limited. And you could have 4 ships and they're all
right,
Constitution class.
Well, you're doing 26 episodes a year for 2 series.
But you derailed me.
Oh, sorry.
Where was I going?
We were talking about the modular bridges swappable.
Yeah. It was like when we were in Battlestar Galactica, We never used a single piece of stock footage, not once, not ever. Gary says no more stock footage. Every ship, every shot of the ship is new. And we have the same ability. We share parts and things. Sometimes we save time by doing that, but it's mostly about the aesthetic. The idea that all of these ships all share design lineage. You could swap things over like crazy. All the ships look like all the other ships. It's like when someone says, well, that looks kind of like this other Starfleet ship. Well, yeah, that's the way Starfleet is. You can see the family is so apparent and obvious.
They look alike until they don't. I mean, yeah. Now, here's the thing. So we think about you in ship design now, but you sent me some cool things here. Did you do some set designing and?
Oh, yeah. So I was a little involved with the transporter there for a while. I really enjoyed doing that. That was a lot of fun. In some of the very early concepts that they had done, they had like guys sitting right at the rim of the transporter dais with little like junior panels. And I'm like, well, I mean, I prefer to do where you could see the line that runs through the original series to Next Generation to the Kirk Spock motion picture era. Look, I mean, we got the little alcove. We could go into TNG had that. The motion picture stuff had that. To put someone in that corner there opposing the transporter console, those are thumbprints. You've restyled them, but it's still the same damn place. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So, I have to say there's one thing that I did in that picture that shows my New York City roots.
I'll bring it back.
See the wall there, the white wall?
Yeah.
See that it says Transporter Room 3 on it? To me, that was like a New York City subway platform. Where they have the ceramic on the walls. And I'm like, well, in a way, this isn't unlike a subway platform,
Arriving now. Yeah, we just don't have the little voiceover ding or whatever.
Bong, bong.
The bong, bong. Let me see. So what are we at? Oh my gosh, we've almost been an hour. Can you believe it? So tell me, so totally not Starfleet. And since you sent these, I haven't seen it. We haven't had a chance to talk. Did you have a hand in the Shrike?
Yeah, I built the approval model for that too. I built almost all the approval models.
Whoops, let me get back here. There, boom.
Which is really where you're getting down to
your front view.
Figuring out the details and stuff.
Well, it's your classic villain Spike. It's got to be
bad guys. Spiky, pointy.
Yeah.
Triton's his trident. If it's round and soft, it just doesn't look dangerous. But there are shots where visual effects did where the damn thing looks like a spider, hanging over the ship. Those are early images.
What was the so with all these Starfleet ships, and it's all read. I hadn't had a chance to. Well, I have a little bit with Dave, but not you and not Terry yet. But I read about the think tank that was, and John Eves being involved too.
Yeah.
What was all these ships generating all this? Was it everybody kind of got together and made a basic thought, and then you're set off to do the actual bring it to life?
Yeah, I mean, often John would do some sketches, and then we'd have meetings with Terry and Dave, and just talk about it, and then I would go off and start building in 3D, which is great because you could take that model and stretch it and adjust it and see it in different kinds of light. I mean, a sketch is great, but it really doesn't cover it all. You have to really fill in a lot. But I mean, John and I go so far back. I mean, we were working together, and did ships together on Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise.
Yeah.
We're a perfect working, team.
The little Romulan scout ship, that was you?
That was me.
Yeah. Like the last live model. Well, I as much as I love the scout, I love the fact they built it's like the series is almost ended, and they build that live miniature
it was fantastic. And I got to design that too. I gave Gary images of what the hangar bay would look like, with the elevator that comes down. It was just great.
I miss the analog. I mean, it's just like the scene in First Contact in the days when you could go over to Image G and see the models. And then, 5 years later, everybody's hunched over their computer screens. It's just not
Well,
quite.
yeah, I love the toys. Of course I do,
It's the giant.
But the thing is that they can't compete. CG just keeps getting better and better and better. Every team CG looks a little bit different. I mean, for instance, when I was on Orville, the first season of Orville, they had a physical model, and people were like rejoicing. And they only had that physical model because they wanted to indulge themselves. There was no good reason to do it, because that after they got done shooting, it was such a pain, and it was a pain in the ass, like all physical models. It got put away, and it's in a crate.
Because or send out on the see, it's more of a promotional thing.
Yeah,
than it is the
well, I don't know if it was John Favreau who said you can't hang a computer file on a wall. I mean, and I totally get that. But as far as production goes, you could do so much more, faster, cheaper, better looking. I mean, I have video of Gary Hutzel at Image G, where he's taking the Reliant and turning it into the Saratoga or something, and he's going, well, the lights are all shorted out. Well, now I have to break this thing open and find the short, and that's going to be my day today. And that's the kind of stuff that happens. And then it goes into a crate. It goes to, Santa Clarita or whatever, and it gets dropped. I mean.
Or what was it, the Excelsior model where it melted in storage, or
I wouldn't be surprised it gets so hot out there.
Yeah, no, I mean like the lights they were using were too hot. Somebody the second generation was sticking too hot lights, and it melted and had to build a new, smaller Excelsior, whatever.
Oh, I think that I remember Peter Lawrenson saying something caught fire or something. Yes, yeah, I mean,
or the mounting brackets and how.
Although I have to say, that if I was in charge of doing the original series remasters, I would have shot that with an 11-foot. I would have even seen if the Smithsonian would loan it or let us, do it there in Washington, D.C. Recreate shots and create new ones with the original model, and do that, and not do the CG thing, as much as I love CG.
Well, that was also 15 years ago, and they were inventing a lot. I mean, they didn't have I know instead of using Gary's setup unit, they invented a unit to save money, and I know.
I mean, we were doing Battlestar Galactica then. You could look at those shows today, and they still look awesome. Space, all the space battles and stuff. Holy crap, the stuff still looks great. And that's stone knives and bearskins compared to what is happening now.
Well, but halfway through the run, they finally kind of got it up to speed. But those, they're never going to go back and redo the first third of the episodes they did. Yeah. And they're not even in order. So
I can't watch the remasters. It just rips me out of the show, because I just find that even the camera style doesn't look like the 60s.
What do you think about
the 60s inside the ship? Why wouldn't you want to be influenced by that?
I know. Well, that was the mindset of trying to keep up with it. What do you think about the Doomsday Machine remake? But they did choreograph the battle. That was like the one that I really appreciated.
I didn't get that far.
All those lines.
Painful.
That was after the first 20 minutes.
Too painful. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen a single episode of Discovery. And there's a lot of different reasons, and some are political reasons. I can't watch the show. A lot of us weren't treated respectfully when they were putting that show together. And if you can't respect me, then I can't respect you enough to watch your show either.
What do you think about Strange New Worlds?
Haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it?
No.
Have you watched any of the animateds? Either one?
I watched first season of Lower Decks, which I really loved. It's obvious that
it's the Adult Swim Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're not rewriting it, which is fine if it's a multiverse, but you watch Lower Decks and you go, well, these people are geeks. They just love Star Trek. They love the show.
Well, that's Mike McMahon on. See, that's my thing about. I looked at Dave when I first got to know him, a year or so ago, 2 years, and I said, "Where were you in 2017?" He's like, "I applied." But it's like all of the things they, and within a year they were backtracking on a lot. Oh, we tore out the Hall of viewers, because blah blah blah. but it's I totally get, you mentioned it earlier. And I try to tell, there's so many fans who are frustrated and they don't know why. And by the way, I saw the last, a month or two before Picard, you started writing some little essays about main view bridge viewers and
Oh,
all
you
kinds
mean,
of little minutia that like smoothing the water from then to now.
you know, writing about windows on the bridge and viewing
Yeah,
screens and
yeah.
stuff, right? Yeah, I mean, and I also there's some of the things that send some fans, and it's great to go wild or go wild, have all the fun you can, you know. But there are things that's like, you know, when we talked about this, they called it Floorgate. You know, why would they have shiny like glass floors on a starship, floors you can't run on? And I'm like, why do you think that Starfleet engineers would put a floor you can't run on in a starship? I mean, that's flawed already. You know, of course they're going to put floors you could run in on a starship. Stop. You know, I hated the idea of the windows when I first saw it in the first JJ movie. Hated it. But, you know, then later on I realized, you know what? They're not glass. It's just a transparent part of the hull. It's as strong as anywhere else. And one of the things Gene always talked about was human beings going out there and doing things and seeing things with their own eyes. And I can't remember the name of the astronaut who said that there's something to be said for actually looking at beautiful things with your own eyes. So it's like I could see where Gene would say, it's not electronic all the time. It's electronic most of the time, but there are times that you actually can look at it with your own eyes.
And see, but I was right with you because I remember thinking the first time I saw it as a window, but it's like, no, the whole point was in the 60s,
yes.
It was a radical.
It was radical.
You assumed it was a window.
Impossible.
You assumed it was a window until we show you, no, here's the aft view. Yeah. Here's close up. Here's magnification 12, Sulu.
But if you want to do science, if you're doing science fiction, then the idea that it's a combination view screen and also a variable transparent part of, if you watch Picard, you'll see that you can't see into the bridge. Terry didn't want that at all.
Yeah.
You know, we struggled with it for a while. I mean, a lot of my conceptual stuff has the window because that's what they had been doing up until then. And then Terry, you know, Terry's really smart. He recognizes the things that upsets fans. Like, for instance, he anticipates. Like, there were people online going, how is it that Jack Crusher has a British accent? Come on. And then in one episode, Picard goes, what's with the British accent?
One line. That's what I've said forever. A lot of the stuff you can handle with one line.
Yes. But you need someone who knows it through and through. Just someone you hire off the street, no matter how good they are, no matter how many wonderful Mission Impossible movies they made or anything, he's not going to know. He's not going to know. And then also someone like JJ, who's a nice enough guy. I've talked to him, you know. But if you're doing big stuff like that, you've got to believe that you're right. It's the ego that's driving you to be a success. I don't blame him for following his instincts. It's just that they're probably wrong. You know.
Yeah. So Picard's ending. Here's a big picture thing. Then I want to give this Blu-ray away, and I want to get back to our chat. But here's the big picture thing I want to. So we're in this world. By the way, we're like no one's talking about this, and I've been doing a crash course because I realize this is part of the recipe here. We're on the eve of a potential writer's strike here, for one thing, which will blow everything up.
That's why it's slower in here lately.
Yeah, but short of that, we're in this world where now the throw money at everything streaming for everybody is ending, and they're ratcheting back. You know, Netflix has already, like, unless it's like their hyper series, they let things run 3 10 episode years, and they go away. So we're sitting here at a time where now they've apparently everybody on Discovery was going to go 6 seasons. They've pulled that back to 5. They're reshooting an ending to make it the series finale. And Picard is ending, and people talk about spinoffs and all that. So I don't know where your opinion is, what you hear. What's your Hollywood vibe about this whole streaming industry was a baby, and now it's like it's not. So are we going to still have, 50? Whether you like whether it's your favorite or not, the model has been 50 new Star Treks a year, 5 series, 10 episodes. Maybe we pull back. I'd love for Terry to have a spinoff, but they've already got these other two on the
because
launch pad.
honestly, it's the only way I'd ever do Star Trek again. No one else
Yeah.
would ever call me.
Yeah.
I know too much.
Where the bodies are buried.
Yeah.
And the digits.
It's just anybody who works out here, and you don't have to work out here to know this, is that it's not sustainable. I mean, how many streaming services can you have? I mean, come on. I've got 3 right now. And it's not,
Well, people watch the Emmys and they're like, what are these shows? I don't know any of these shows.
Oh, I mean, it's just there's so many things happening, but what are you going to do?
A lot of them are good, but it's like there's too much to watch.
Yeah, there's too much to watch. You just can't watch it all. There's, I have to say there's something to be said. I almost miss the old days when there was just 3 networks, 3, NBC, ABC, CBS. They could make a lot of money when they had a hit show. Now the pie is sliced so thin. I say this almost every day. How can you make money? I mean, how is it sustainable?
They do a resale deal with Amazon. You're watching a 5-year-old network show on Amazon or something. It's like, yeah.
Oh, well, I am. I have to say, there was a show in the 60s called 12 O'Clock High based on the movie of Gregory Peck with Robert Lansing, Gary Seven. If you've never seen 12 O'Clock High, it's on Prime now. Watch the first episode. Lansing is on fire. That guy is intense like you can't believe.
Gary Seven for all of you Trek folk, by the way.
Yeah. Any relation to 7 of 9?
Was he?
Wow, is she fantastic? Well, all the actors are great, but I love seeing 7 used so beautiful. Look at Beverly, the stuff that she gets to do. I mean,
now you see why Gates. Well, this whole last year when Gates is talking like this is the best Crusher I've ever got to do. I mean, it's like that should have been a clue.
No, Terry has done, and I have to. Terry is a master of complex storylines, and I mean, if you ever watch 12 Monkeys, which was Terry's show, wow! I mean, it's really the threads are going everywhere. It's really complex. Even watching the first season, you got to really pay attention, And so he knows how to build a story that continues to build. And also he understands what the fans want. And, Terry's not completely 100% able to do everything he wants to do. There are many people above him, but he still managed to navigate the waters and get the kind of stuff in there that, look,
the most bang for the buck.
People who love Discovery, people who love, whatever the other shows are, and that's all great. But there is a large portion of the audience that has gone unserved for 20 years. And those are the people who love Next Generation, and, So now that they're being served, they're overjoyed. They're excited. I'm excited, This is Picard is all about coming full circle. That's what the whole season is about, coming full circle. And it's not just the characters. People behind the camera having those same coming full circle feelings, to be together with Jonathan Frakes, on Picard and talking about stuff. And I'm so fortunate to have been given the opportunity for, me and some of my friends who were, original gangsters get to come back and take another shot at it and even show how some of it's done, that's a thrill. That's a thrill. I'll never forget those guys for what they did for us.
The minute it started to leak out and the minute I heard from you, remember we did Johnny's reached out to me because there was nothing officially being done and we were still in COVID. And in like late 2021, he said, there's nothing being done for the 25th anniversary of First Contact. Would you do like a Zoom meeting panel if I can get everybody together? And I said, well, sure. And so remember we did that night. But that was it was Mike and you and Ben Betts and Vanover and I'm trying to think who else. But Dave Blass, that was the first time I really met Dave Blass. And I'm like, why are you having the Picard guy in on this First Contact thing. And then he started to talk about, well, I knew he was a production designer, Picard, the new one, but I didn't get it. I didn't know the connection. And then he talked about being in line to see First Contact in 96. And I was like, oh, okay, he's a pro who's a fan. Okay. And then it was dawning on me. And I kind of knew it, but when I was getting, somebody said, okay, well, I'll have this for you tomorrow. I'm working while we talk here, Dave, you'll be happy with me. And I'm like, oh, okay. This is everyone who he's got working on the show now, but between the line. But then to hear his philosophy, which is what I was teasing about, where were you in 2017? But when he says, and I love these quotes, like, it's not our job. I mean, I sensed this in 2017. I tried to calm fans down about, look, if the visuals, all these people are all these, wardrobe and set and visual effects and props, they're all eager to do the job. They know it's Star Trek. Some of them are more fans than others, but the main thing they're looking at is they're competing with Game of Thrones, or they're competing with, they want to show their peers how creative they can be. And that's the human instinct. And I don't fault them for that. What they're lacking is a marching order from on high to say, okay, you're going to compete. You're going to show what you can do. You're going to, compete for awards, but here's the parameters. And to me, that didn't get set in the beginning. For one thing, it was so chaotic, right? Discovery launched with 15 moms and dads, from Brian and beyond. And I said, what if you can compete, you can have it look like 2017 or 2020 if you give people the right marching orders. And that's what we finally got around to here. It's like, yes, have it look modern and sleek and cool and elegant and updated. And no, it's not 1966 and it's not but it's the design. Now you can shoot it and light it and edit it and frame it for now. And that to me, I think, is the big thing. And it feels like it's just taken a few years to get there. Does that make sense? To the point where you've got a Terry and you've got a Dave who are putting it all together.
That was just a perfect storm. I don't know if it can happen again. Oh,
what was a perfect storm?
Picard season 3.
Oh,
was a perfect storm. I don't know whether that can happen again. It was almost an accident, It takes the people even higher than Terry to understand what happened and why it happened to be able to do that again. But I don't know that they know that, because they don't understand the subtleties of what made it exciting. How can they? Unless you're really
unless they're learning.
Unless they do. Well, I hope so. I can tell you right now that the odds of, me or Mike or being involved with another Star Trek entirely hinges on that.
I mean, they're out there. Like Mike Westmore famously, he says, like, well, I knew Star Trek was a thing. And his cousin, Aunt Pat, worked here on the show. But he wasn't a fan, but he was smart enough and creative enough to go, well, this is my assignment. I'm going to deep dive and learn all I can learn.
Anybody who does what Mike Westmore does, creating creatures and stuff, is
but I mean, he researched. But first, Next Generation, he got told no a lot of times when he was ready to do the deep dive, cool thing. You know what I mean?
Well, Star Trek, especially then.
But he's an example of someone who wasn't a fan, but they dived in. They were smart enough to get it, what they needed to do, and catch up.
Yeah, he understands it.
But he's not everybody.
No. Well, I mean, the subtleties of, doing aliens and creatures, it's a little different than, I think that when it comes to doing the really subliminal stuff, like what makes a Starfleet ship different, because I've done makeup and I've done ships.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's easier from the makeup side. Of course, you don't want to do the Klingons looking like big rubber heads like they had in Discovery. When I saw that, I had a heart attack. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you're actually smothering these people in rubber so thick they can't emote at all. As a makeup artist and who've made up many Klingons, I know that one of the attractive things about the Next Generation Klingons on that whole era was that you maintain the actor. That actor was still there and could act and be
or
seen.
Cardassian or Ferengi or whatever. Yeah.
And then when you cover up, it's like, why? You've taken all the fun out of it for the actor, I'll tell you that. You know.
And you make it harder for the audience to connect with that character.
And look at each Klingon that we saw in Next Gen or Deep Space Nine. They all had a specific, look about them that was brought to it by the actor. The actor has a certain kind of face. Wow, to throw that out was just like crazier than throwing out LCARs.
Well, speaking of crazy, can you hang on just a second? And I want to hit the chat, but I want to give this Blu-ray away.
Station identification.
And all I have to do is, so everybody, just to review here. So as of an hour before showtime today, everybody who left a comment on one of my YouTube videos, since we announced this on Thursday, if you left a comment and you were subscribed, and a lot of people had to come back, and YouTube is not great on this, but anyway, so we've got a pool of folks here, and I'm just going to hit, sometimes I wish I had a mirror and I would hold it up and show you, but I'm going to pick a random name here and we'll see who we got. All right. So this is exciting. Okay. I've hit the button and they're popping around, and who is it? One of our Portales, not Portales, one of my Patreon folk, our TTLers, Justin Porteous. Now I have to get an address because it's on me to mail this, but they're not coming from a central place. But we will do this. So congrats, Justin. And someday when you're off your high of Picard, there's still lots of things I can critique, and they have made some interesting creative choices, but there's Trek people trying to do good things here. It's not an exact, I know they retrenched a lot of discoveries. The Discovery bridge design was like, for Enterprise was like a bus station, and they've made this a little bit less so. Anyway, I have something, if we have time, I'm going to discuss my theory of how to stay sane moving forward in Trek world. But anyway, congratulations, Justin. I'll get with you about getting your address from you. Go, Justin. So here, let me backtrack in the chat. I do this anyway. Let me backtrack and see what we've got. Actual comments, aside from everybody saying hello, hello. You were laughing at somebody way back early on. John X says, oh, here we go. John X says, oh, wow, Larry's early. No, Larry's like actually on time. So thank you for all the 300 love. There you go. Love for Dougie, of course. Thank you. All the congrats. Let's see. So Christoph is in Austria. He says, hey, Doug, we're honored with you being here today. Yay.
Christoph. Awesome.
Here's somebody saw you elsewhere. Daniel C.O. Love Doug's commentary. He was so wonderful on the Random Red Shirt podcast.
Did I make any sense?
No more than here, but
am I making sense?
Of course you are. Everybody's saying hi and welcome. I'm looking for actual questions, guys, and I've gone back to the beginning. We do this. I'm back scrolling. Let's see. Oh, J.R. Poole says that he YouTubed the Oscar clip of you winning.
That was surrealistic.
So who was in the picture with you? Annette Bening, you said?
No, not Annette Bening. Ann Archer.
Ann Archer. She was the presenter, right?
Did you see Fatal Attraction? She was wife in Fatal Attraction, who gets Glenn Close beats the tar out of her in the final sequence. Does she play? I'm going off deep in here. Doesn't she play Harrison's wife when he's doing the CIA movies? I don't know. Patriot Game and could be. I think maybe she's his wife in those. She gets kidnapped in one of them or something. No, in those scenes in Fatal Attraction where Glenn Close was attacking her with a knife. Mm-hmm. Glenn Close was not acting. I mean, she was trying to kill Ann Archer. It was unbelievable. After every take, I literally, didn't carry her, but had to help her off the stage. Ann Archer was so exhausted defending herself. Let's see. So JR, let's clear something up here. I kind of flew through that, assuming the model with you guys, that was the model that Greg Jean built for Trials and Tribulations. That was not the original 11 foot. That was a half size. Yeah. The original Air and Space Museum model is the original 60s model, just to clear up everybody.
And I forget, you know, somebody who has the. Do you know who has the Trials and Tribs models?
I think there's a couple of them out there. The one that was actually used to shoot, I'm not sure who has it.
Because Greg Jean, he built the K7 big and built a. I love the fact that we got a D7. Well, I love the fact that Ron Moore made D7 canon. It was never
That
canon.
D7, they didn't have budget for that. Gary asked Greg to do a favor for the show. He built that Klingon ship because he loved Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it was in the show.
Which he did that a lot, and a lot of the model builders would do things like that, or the MSG guys would throw in extra shots and
geeky fans.
And they knew we'd be talking about him 50 years later. And I said the late great Greg Jean.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We've lost him. Yeah. Okay. Looking for actual. Oh, here. A Dick Tracy question for Melanie. Is it true that Warren
That's not true. Well, you know, I don't think he wanted to wear makeup, but he knew that if he didn't try, that the press would probably, you know, take. He wants to be able to say he tried. And so John and I actually went to his house up on Mulholland Drive and put pieces on him and stuff like that. And it just didn't make any sense to put him in makeup. There's practical reasons. He's a director. He's a producer. He's got to be behind the camera, in front of the camera. If he has to spend 3 hours or 2.5 hours getting makeup on, that's time that's taken away. But you have to look at Warren as kind of a Dick Tracy character without any makeup on.
Mm-hmm.
He's so incredibly handsome and good looking that, I mean, it's like changing the Coca-Cola sign, you know? They haven't changed that since how long has it been now? It's Warren Beatty is a Dick Tracy character without a piece of rubber on him. And to bury him, I think, it never worked for us. We thought it was a bad idea.
Well, and the fact that, I mean, yeah, Dick Tracy's square jaw is the icon of the strip, but in a movie, he's the hero of the straight guy, and all the villains.
He's the anchor to reality.
Yeah, and all the bad guys are the ones with the outrageous.
Yeah, but he is outrageous looking. I mean, and can you imagine
wearing the yellow?
He was way, way, way more handsome when he was in his 20s. Oh my God, splendor in the grass, and just this, you hate a guy like that. You won the looks lottery, you bastard. You get everything and the looks too.
Glenn says, I still say we need to find a way to plug Doug into the national energy grid because his energy could power the entire country.
I'm ready to be plugged in.
Let me see. Linda, you're right. This is like a mini Portal 47. I have to watch it. We're gonna get Doug, and we'll do a real huge deep dive on my Portal 47.
Cool.
Let's see. What is this? Daniel C. Doug, your work and that of the Akutas and John Eves and Gary defined the look of Star Trek for me, and your work is absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
There you go.
It really means a lot, I'll tell you. And we work for the fans. That's all we care about.
A lot of praise here. Question. Okay, Tim. As you know them both so well, who would you say is the more knowledgeable on Star Trek? Oh, come on, Tim. This will teach me.
It's kind of like comparing apples and oranges,
That'll teach me not to read a question all the way through. Tim, I thought I could trust you. Okay. JR says, and maybe you can explain this. I like Doug's Facebook post about the Air Force to justify retrofits.
Yeah, I know the post you're talking about. I had people saying, well, they're not going to be building any P-51 Mustangs. I mean, well, yeah, take a look at this. It's like I try to explain. It's like it may look like old technology to you, but it's not necessarily. Depends on the mission envelope, that they're being designed for. They're still using prop-driven planes in military, use. There was one plane in the post that I posted. It looks like it grew from a P-51 Mustang, but
I love a moment in the Oppie documentary about the Mars rover where they had an issue and they had to go. Or am I thinking The Martian, the movie fiction? Anyway, there's a minute where they have to go back and find people who knew coding from the 70s and 80s to go fix the current problem. And if that knowledge had passed in the generations, they wouldn't have been able to fix the problem. Maybe I'm thinking the Martian.
Well, but there's plenty of stuff that looks like old technology on the surface, but it really, as long as it's useful, it's not really old, is it? And I know a lot of people say that. I had been saying this back during the NX when I took a lot of flack about the NX. Is that the B-52 bomber? I mean, it's like from the 1950s. It's still the backbone of the Strategic Air Command, and they're probably going to be using it for. I mean, they're 70 years old right now. By the time they get done with them, they're going to be 100 years old. And of course, the other thing is I've had people saying, well, why a design that looks old? Well, remember on Next Generation, all the ships we saw from Kirk's era,
Still there.
We saw Excelsior, we saw Grissom, we saw, these ships are made to, I mean, I know that we're destroying an Enterprise like every 10 years lately, but they really should last a lot. If it's the captains, I guess, because look how long the original Constitution went, I like the idea. I wish we would stop having new Enterprises. Let an Enterprise pass through a few different hands so it has history. I miss that. I loved on the original series seeing that there was a whole life on the Enterprise before Kirk came along with Captain Pike, and
Well, that's what I can hear Gene's words in his pitch. He said the Enterprise is a ship with history.
Yeah. And now we're like crashing one every, it diminishes the ship,
I won't even go there about uniforms all over the place, but okay. Oh, we what I totally skipped over? We were talking about that. And Linda said, I want to talk about his doodles.
Well, as you know, it was Dave Blass's idea to come up with a name that honored Dorothy. I did some research. I saw and I knew that there was a city in Germany called Duderstadt, and that also there is a world-class nuclear scientist named James Duderstadt. So I thought that covered all the bases: a place, a scientist, and someone behind the scenes that we all love so dearly.
I haven't, and of course, everybody that's not on top, Dorothy was Doug's beloved wife. Gorgeous woman, so talented, the food stylist on Enterprise, and I know the love of your life, and it was really rough losing her. Life.
Yeah.
And we all were watching you. I'll just say this. A lot of people are like, wow, are you reading Doug's posts? He's really having he should have a rough time. He should grieve and mourn, but he's really seems, and I said, how out there Doug is. Doug is passionate. He shares his joys, and now he's sharing his sorrows. And I
think that writing the way I did, which took some people by surprise, and I heard a lot of people talk to me about it. I thought that, if I do pat myself on the back, especially looking back now, and it's only been 9 months, I thought that it was the best possible way I could do it and handle it. It was very therapeutic to talk to everybody. I have a lot of people on my Facebook page who are not just Star Trek fans, but friends, who knew her and knew how we felt about each other, and I felt safe. I felt that these are people who actually would like to know how I honestly felt,
Yeah. Well, and it was a world still creeping out of the pandemic, and people were still used to being kind of ratcheted down and not running around together. So it was a kind of it threw people, but it was also made sense to me in a way. I mean, I was watching you day to day.
I had people telling me, thank you for being open the way you are, because so many people feel like they can't talk about it, or they hold it in, or they try to bury it. And listen, I mean, I did a lot of writing about Dorothy over that period.
How's your book coming? Were you
really great? I mean, right now I've got like 300 pages, and I feel like I'm just getting started. And I'm thinking, I could end up with 700 pages. I'm thinking, who the hell wants to read 700 pages about me? It's not like I'm George Washington or anything. So, I mean, I'll get to 700 pages, and then I'll go back and just cut out the best of the best of the best of the best, sir. But there's some really funny stories, and Star Trek is a big part of it. But, there's a lot of other stuff that happened to me. There was just, I read through it, and I'm like, oh my God, really? This happened?
Well, about the ship here, I saw that, and I thought what you just said. There's a scientist. I thought maybe that was Dorothy's actual name, and she just shortened it for a stage name.
I mean,
but if that's not it, that's not it.
Well, I never heard her say that the name was originally Duderstadt, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, when people would come in through Ellis Island and go, Duderstadt, you're Duder.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in a way, who knows? Who
Yeah,
knows?
but
But
yeah,
anyway,
that's Dorothy's. I also have to say thank you to the fans. I mean, uh, a lot of you know that some of Dorothy's ashes are going to the moon later this year through Celestis. That sent Leonard Nimoy and Gene Roddenberry into deep
mm-hmm.
space. I don't want to do deep space. I want to know where she is. If you do deep space, you're like, well, that could be anywhere. But every time the moon rises,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be seeing Dorothy, And the fans, Celestis contacted me and said this would be a great thing for Dorothy. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm sure it's not cheap. And they're like, well, it's about $12,000. And I'm thinking, imagine me asking Dorothy, you think I should spend $12,000 to put some of your ashes on? Would you think I was nuts? So he said, well, you could do a GoFundMe. And I said, no, I can't do a GoFundMe. I can't ask the fans for money. I just can't. And I said, but you could do it if you want. You could do a GoFundMe for Dorothy. I'll stand behind it. And he did. And the fans raised the money in 24 hours. And I cried when that happened. I mean, I really broke down into tears when I saw that. Thank you, everybody. From my heart, thank you so much. I could, I'll start crying right now if I keep going.
Okay, next question. You were talking about music and everything, and I noticed this right off too. The blaster beam.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I also love the
Peter Kirk's
tonalities they used. They used these tonalities over the Shrike that were almost like Vajrask almost, but almost like prehistoric dinosaur sounds almost, that I thought was so wonderful, which you saw Steven Spielberg doing in Duel. Remember the truck chasing Dennis Weaver, Spielberg's first?
Spielberg's first movie, right?
The sounds that thing made when it went off the cliff, it was like a massive, like a dinosaur. The sound effects, look at how brilliantly they brought back all those sound effects, all the sounds on the bridge that you know what they mean. You know that sound is the computer rejecting something. You know that sound. Wow.
I made a point, that one episode that opens with just the view screen pinging scanner sound. The ping, ding, 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 and it's blackness of space, but you hear that and you know exactly you're on the bridge looking out the view screen of a Federation starship in Star Trek.
But on Next Generation, and I'm sure that Bob Justman had a lot to do with this, that they carefully worked out what every sound was and what it meant. And after so many years, you knew when the panel was rejecting a command, even before they said it's not feeding in. You knew it already.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah. So Cairo, who is Robert Cairo, also in Vienna, he says, to be fair, people like Andrew Jarvis had worked some LCARs into some designs, yes, with first season. So Andrew Jarvis, you worked with him, didn't you? Yeah. He was he's an old Trek fan, and he was doing what he could in his little way. Yeah.
Yeah, he loved doing it. He loved getting to do LCARs.
He's been on with us. Let me see here. Have you done cross sections, or has someone done cross sections for all these current?
No, because when you're on a show for 7 years and you're doing 26 episodes a year, you actually have the time to do those kinds of things. And there's going to be so many shows that it's worth taking the time to do those. We're doing just 10 hours and nothing more, and we're doing how many ships, are being done in that short period of time. I mean, more money is being spent these days, but we actually, in a lot of ways, have less time than we did. The way these things are scheduled these days. I mean, we had much more time on the ships in the previous shows, like Voyager, developing Voyager, developing the
startup, the hero ship of the series. Yeah. So here is Scott, my assistant. They were praising Terry for being in the right place, the right time, and allowing this. And so Scott is saying, well, but who gave him that carte blanche?
Of course, Alex Kurtzman did. When I went to the premiere, I got to say, I'd never met him before. We were at the premiere, and I was talking to Michael Dorn and Terry. And Terry says, have you met Alex Kurtzman? I'm like, no, I've never met him. Well, he's standing right behind you. I turn around, and Alex Kurtzman's standing there, hand outstretched to shake my hand and thank me for everything that I had done on the show and everything I had done on Next Generation. He's a real nice guy. I know that. Listen, I mean, Rick Berman used to take quite the beating back in the old days from the fans. It's a really hard job. It's not a job I think I would want. I don't think I'd want to be art director. I don't think I'd want to be production designer. I was like, you guys are crazy to want to be art director.
Well, when he and Bob Orsi first came on the scene as the writing team that was going to do Star Trek 09, but at the same time, JJ was directing. But they made a big deal about their Supreme Court, and they had 5 in their think tank, and one of them was his producing partner Ryan Burke, who knew nothing about. They looked at it like this spectrum of, well, we've got geeks and we've got people that know nothing. So we think the committee approach is going to. And I was like, well, you can paint that, but I don't care who and what it is. The committee approach has its limits. And in a lot of ways, I think that, it explains a lot. But at the time, Bob and Alex both said, Bob Orsi said, I'm a huge original series guy. And Alex said, I'm not original series, but I am Next Generation. And then they took a beating singly and individually. And then by the time Discovery came out and they announced him as the link to the past, and people were like having none of it, But I think part of it's been a guy alone who didn't have this rich. And Bob, I've had interviews with. Alex, not yet, aside from a minute on the red carpet or something. But I really think from Discovery to Strange New to Picard, and now that's why I'm wondering what the shows to come are going to be. And I know you're thinking maybe it's lightning in a bottle once here, but I also want to hope that there's been like a learning curve, both about what Star Trek is and how to handle streaming show. Terry, these aren't totally episodic shows, but they all have a unique feel to them, even as they're part of the arc. And I have to think that it was people had written serial shows for age since Lost, but I think Star Trek was extra hard to run through a serial, and Strange New Worlds is doing episodic standalone way more than these.
Yeah, I love episodic.
But I'd like to think there's a curve and that they're getting better at it. And if that is Alex's learning curve and who he hires or who the people that pop up to be hired, I don't know. But I like to think it's getting better.
I mean, he's a well-meaning guy, I'm sure. I don't know him. I've only met him. But he gave Terry the opportunity to do the show pretty much any way he wanted. No one gets to do anything exactly the way they want.
Well, right. Somebody's got to pay the piper in the end. Yeah. What's what are you running over budget on? What?
I would love it if they brought Terry back and gave him maybe even more, leeway. Yeah. I think that would be wise on their part to do that. Only time will tell whether that can happen. I know pretty much for sure that there's no way no one's going to ask to hire me without someone like Terry or Dave Blass. A lot of production designers, well, when I was on Orville, Robert Strohmeyer, Stephen Lineweaver, the production designer, Robert Strohmeyer, the art director, they didn't know anything about it. They didn't know who I was. When I say who I was, like I'm somebody, but it's like I am known for a certain kind of thing.
You know who I am.
If you do any research on Star Trek, you're probably going to see me, like Michael Kuda and stuff like that. And they hired me because I was a graphic designer. And then Robert said I gave him my ArtStation page, and he was like, because how nice it is to have somebody come in who already understands everything.
Well, yeah. So Melanie says, as much as makeup and effects have improved, the magic of Star Trek has always been the characters and the stories and the concepts. And I think you would agree.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. You could do the whole show without any makeup and effects at all, and it would still be, the good scripts are still interesting.
Just do black box theater like The Impact.
Listen, if you look at Court Martial on the original series, and there's those cardboard cutout buildings outside, we all know what they are. But it's just that it has so much heart and it's done so well that you're willing to go along with it, I've also had actors when we were doing a lot of, like when we did Battlestar Galactica Blood and Chrome, which is a purely green screen show. There are no sets. Mm-hmm. And I've had actors say, yeah, but how are you supposed to act against that? A green screen. And I'm like, almost every serious actor I've ever met wants to do a one-person show on stage where there's just a stool with a spotlight on them. So how come this is so difficult? You know, that's a challenge to you.
Mm-hmm. That's your challenge. I'm just looking at here's Adrian, just kind of saying what we all know. Yes, see, the audience gets it. Okay. And I've got him twice in a row here. Star Trek bridges or the total evolution from.
Well, I mean, the Navy inspected the original series bridge back in the 60s because they were impressed with it. And when we were on Deep Space Nine, Herman Zimmerman was hired by the government to design some command centers for the military.
Yes. Well, supposedly, didn't Matt get called in to do the same thing, kind of either during or after the original series? Did I?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised.
I remember, or Gene talk. Gene would kind of embellish a little bit, but I remember talking about maybe in the making of, so in the 60s or maybe a little bit later, about the military curious about Star Trek. It's like, what's the big secret? It's a set. It's a captain in the middle with the stations around to feed him information. Like, I don't know what the
there's a beautiful listen. I'm sure the Vulcans would agree with me. It's so logical.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of people that logic eludes them, so maybe they did need a special.
Especially that original series, the things that Matt, because of who he was, thought about. That the captain is in the elevated chair, and it puts him at eye level with everyone else's panels and everybody sitting around them. And
this is what I caution a lot of people. We get into this with the miniskirts even. And something I didn't realize until 5-6 years ago, and people say, oh, the sexist miniskirts and it's Gene wanting it's like, for about 5 seconds, the miniskirt was a huge rebellion against all the old white guys that were telling women what to wear.
It was women saying, we'll do what we want, when we want, and
it was like bra burning.
Of course, Gene loved pretty girls too, and you had to have sex in the shows. I mean, the captain wore a skin tight shirt, you know what I mean?
Especially with those censors, but yeah.
I mean, and the same for Playboy too. I've talked to, girls about Playboy magazine, and their idea of it is so totally different than what it was at the time. I mean, Hugh Hefner was an advocate for, he was a feminist, and and now looking back, it appears to just be a smut magazine, which it was anything but. Mm-hmm. Well, there was smut in it, but if you consider that to be smut, I think that.
Well, yeah, but it's like looking at the waltz as a radical dance now.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that gets old and creaky. Go back to when it was first out, and it was the radical thing of the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the Bridge of the Enterprise. People don't realize what the Bridge of the Enterprise looked like in 1966 today.
That's what
now we just take it for
the
granted.
Shape of the ship. But remember, all we had were the little nose cone rockets going up.
And well, it was like all we had, and were white guys sitting in a command post, American white guys. But all of a sudden, we had Russians, we had a Scotsman, we had a black woman in command of a very important part of staying in touch. I mean, an alien. It was so forward thinking and startling. They were even afraid to show it in some parts of the country. I mean, if you can imagine that.
Well, but what's hard to imagine is feels like we've circled back in some ways that way.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. This has been kind of a fun. Guy Rose says, I'm so sad for the transporter engineers who stand there all day.
There's a whole something.
The O'Brien
Cairo. I never sit when I work. I always stand. I do not have a chair. When I'm at work, when I'm at home, I'm in front of the computer, I'm standing. See? There's no chair there. I stand up the whole time. It's better for you, I think. I never get tired.
Back in the day, back in the Herman Art Department? You did
In the Herman Art Department, I did have a regular desk, but after that, I always got a drafting table. But I guess BSG, I stood up for the whole show. You know,
what would that get you? Oh, some Emmys. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. You know, I have to say that I was very disappointed when Enterprise was canceled. But on the other hand, Star Trek got canceled at the perfect time for me because I don't know that I would ever been able to leave it. As a matter of fact, Gary had asked me onto BSG while I was still on Enterprise. I said, I can't leave. Because Enterprise got canceled, it allowed, and Gary called me that night that we were canceled. And I knew he was going to ask me to come to Battlestar Galactica. And
are you talking about the actual, like the in-house cancellation? Because I remember it was canceled filming Inner Mirror Darkly. I remember when I was on the stages and the word hit the stages and everybody got depressed.
Well, I just remember we found out on the internet. They didn't even tell us. But if it hadn't been canceled, I wouldn't have gone to Battlestar Galactica. Yeah. I wouldn't have all those visual effects nominations and Emmys. You know, so it worked out for me. And frankly, I didn't think I'd ever be back. I don't know. All I could say is that working for Terry and Dave was, you know, joyous, dream come true. You wanted to do the best Star Trek job you could because you knew they understood it. You weren't fighting against someone who didn't get it. They got it. You know, that's amazing.
Here's a question for you. Is it intentional? And I noticed this too.
No.
That the deflector looks like a piece of the D?
That was actually originally supposed to be the emitter for the portal weapon. It's part of the portal weapon. And they wanted to have something underslung. You know, so no, the idea wasn't to look like, and many people have said that it looks like the Enterprise D deflector. Yeah, it does. But I mean, it's like, so the spiky things also look like, you know, something you go stabbing fish in the ocean with too. But, you know, things interconnect and look like other things. Yeah. You know, we needed something that the deflector on the Enterprise D is a big emitter, you know, and this thing is an emitter. It wasn't like, let's do something like the Enterprise D. That was like never the idea.
Well, here's Mu Young saying the best part of the strike.
Yes, thank you. Lovecraftian. I love that.
Because that was totally intended, right?
Heck yes. I love Lovecraft.
Take it now. That's, yeah.
It's creepy.
It is. Let me come back to us here, get you back in shape. Yeah.
The whole ship is creepy. It often looks like a spider about to leap on a fly. It's like,
which, like you said, they've used that kind of feeling when they've shot it. There's a couple of
angles. Visual effects shot that they shot up. They set the angles up really beautifully.
There's you a shout out for the Orville. Yay!
Oh, thanks. Well, I hope we get a season 4.
Well, yeah. So what is up with that?
I'll tell you what's up with it. It is exactly what you were talking about before. It's like everything's reaching kind of a, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back kind of situation, you know, where people are afraid to spend money. And Orville has done really well for them to move it from Hulu to Disney Plus.
And the hump is, I mean, like the investment in the up-res of everything has been made, right? It's like, it's silly that they spent all that money just for one season.
Well, you know, Seth does pretty much whatever he wants. If he decided that's what he wanted to do, by God, he's going to do it, you know?
Well, how much, well, that's a question, you know, how much was, and I haven't like dived into, I haven't followed all the Orville minutia because I've got this other thing I keep my hand, but how much coming out of the the Fox sets, how much was built new, fresh? Was it mainly CG or set extensions, or was there a lot of like original, was it like redressing and, yeah, I mean, that's the sets, everything up and down.
Well, the only really CG thing that I remember as far as set extensions and stuff, and it isn't even extensions, putting that sphere in the, you know, the core, that big circular, like a washing machine window. That's CG, not the wall, but, you know, the object that's generating energy in there is, but it's all, those sets were such an upgrade from season 1 and 2. It was really an amazing job. I mean, when I hadn't seen the show until I got hired, and then I watched the first 2 seasons. And the things that bothered me most, I was like, one is, I don't believe that engineering runs anything. Is that supposed to be the engine room? And then I came in and I find out they're going to redo the whole engine room and made an amazing engine room that you believe drives something like that. And then the other thing was, I remember watching it with Dorothy, and the whole back of the bridge is just like a carpet on the wall. There's a portal and a carpet on the wall. Mm-hmm. And see, if I had been there from the beginning, I could have helped them. You're mostly going to be looking at the captain and the main viewing screen. All that cool stuff on the sides, you're only going to see that when someone's reporting something or if you're shooting across the captain. Mm-hmm. But most of the shots on the bridge were on Seth, and you're seeing this wall with nothing back there. And I remember Dorothy saying it looks like a favorite shoe store. They should have sneakers up there. All I know is that I remember thinking, wow, could I have fun with that? And when I got there, it was the first thing they gave me. I couldn't believe it. And
wait, are you saying you didn't say anything? It was like already on their list?
Yes. Yeah. Just like they knew engineering wasn't right.
Yeah.
You know, and so I couldn't believe that they wanted me to do that back, the arch, to put, stuff in there, like interesting looking panels that look like they make sense,
Yeah. And they're not just.
I think they're the hardest science thing on the bridge, if you ask me.
Yeah. Here's this is something I see people talk about. So we've talked about the Stargazer, we've talked about the Titan, we've talked about now the new Intrepid. Are any of those meant to have saucer step?
Yeah, they all do.
They all do. Okay, there we go.
Boom. But why are we going back to round holes? There's the question.
Yeah, well, I've seen you talk about this. What they were.
I mean, first of all, we like the round saucer better. I sort of had something to do with this saucer being stretched. I didn't intend it. I'll tell a story. Rick Sternbach had done like 30 really cool spaceships for Voyager. And, and of course they're going to keep having you do more and more and more until there's no more time. But Mike Okuda comes in and says, we're going to a meeting on the Voyager. I need 3 designs for them to hate. 3.
Yes.
You only have 15 minutes. Whatever you can do in 15 minutes. And I did 3 really primitive things. And one of them was an elongated nose. And Mike came back and said they want to develop that one. I'm like, so I've never been crazy about that look, because now you're getting more towards like a regular ship shape, a submarine shape, Mm-hmm. And I just love the juxtaposition of and I know Terry does too, the saucer. So, I mean, actually we came up with it. We said, well, they found that some of the elongated saucers don't, in computer simulations, aren't doing their hot dropping. What's his name? He says, you hot drop the saucer section. I love that. Not faring as well as the round saucer. Nobody knows why yet. I just think it looks better. I think a round saucer looks better.
It's the evolution. Well, I know it gave Rick fits when they were going to put the landing legs on, and he accounted for the density of the warp coils, but it made it look like it didn't make sense visually to people that don't know how dense the nacelles are. So he scientifically made it accurate, designed it for the legs to come out here. But when you'd see a full shot, it looked like it flipped over on its nose. So Dan said after that, you never saw a profile of the Voyager. You either saw it cut off, like in the 37
behind a rock,
front end, or you saw it was so foreshortened from the front that you didn't think about it.
Well, I was never a big fan of landing the ship, and when they wanted me to put landing legs in the cross section, they hadn't done it. They hadn't landed it yet.
Yeah.
I was like, no, why are you doing that? I always loved the idea that Gene Roddenberry said the Enterprise was a creature of space. There was no reason to land it, So I'm not a big fan of landing these.
That's what runabouts are for.
Yeah, or scramble your molecules, in the transporter.
Okay. This may not be your department, but Scott says, dying to know, pretty clear that the dirty space camera lens visual effects filter we've seen lately was lessened. In other words, the clean shots and no lens flares.
It's always a choice. It doesn't happen, but nothing happens by accident. Sometimes you make mistakes.
I'm thinking that was another one of Terry's main.
What you mean, getting rid of like
Yeah.
dirty lens flares and
Well, not only designing the ships the way they're back to now, but actually the way we see them, and they're not just kind of oozing around. They're like pretty things that are lit and they're contrasty. And
yeah, I find that it depends on the show. I think that a show like Battlestar Galactica really is gritty, and that's why there's a lot of handheld camera. Because Steve McNutt, the DP, was doing handheld cameras inside the ship because he wanted it to feel like a documentary. So that meant that you could have lens flares, they never did anything like what they did in some of the Star Trek movies. But I think that if you're going to have a real gritty TV show, then that type of stuff works really well. Star Trek tends to be a cleaner universe,
Yeah. Well, that's it. Hey, listen, we're coming up on 2 hours, and I can
Holy
let you
cow.
know if you need to. I know. Well, hang out with the right people, see what happens. You lose track of time.
I swear to God, we could talk for days.
I'm probably 2/3 of the way through the chat, and I'm horrible about like trying to finish. Like I never saw a chat log that I didn't kill off, but I don't want to drag you over the cliff with me too.
Are you going to be posting this as a recorded thing? You are.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. It'll be up and yeah.
Oh yeah, let me know.
And everything. I'm just but just so I think I do this in the afternoon for now 300 episodes so we could have the Europeans join in too. So we've had people from the UK and Germany and Austria and France in here too. Cairo's from Austria. I'm just sitting here madly. I'm about 2/3 of the way through your chat, and I'm just trying to see actual questions before we because I think so. Yeah. So you're kind of with me. It's like I'm waiting to see between Discovery being canceled or curtailed and Picard going away. Strange New Worlds is fairly popular. And it's a standalone. It's not heavily serialized. Where if your main bad thing of the year fails, then you've lost a whole season. They've got individual shows, but other than that, and I guess they're working on the Section 31. They're working on the Starfleet Academy show. So the whole thing about it's like, are they going to let them be all on the air at the same time? Will they have smaller budgets? And I think Discovery was set up to have a huge budget that they've structurally pulled back. So yeah, this whole thing about how fast can we get Terry a show? It may be even if the industry lets them keep having 5.
All I can say is that you should lock Terry in while you can.
Well, that's what I would say. Yeah. That's what I would say. I'm looking here. Another vote for, everybody. 12 O'Clock High was a movie, but then they made a series of it. And I was going to tell you when you were talking, Ralph Sininsky directed a 12 O'Clock High.
Oh, no surprise.
He was very high on
that first season, 12 O'Clock. They got rid of Lansing after season 1 because he was a lot like General Savage, a very intense guy, boiling over all the time, and he, probably hard to work with. But wow, that first season, his Robert Lansing is amazing. Plus, the scripts are just great.
Well, Gene was doing a half-hour drama called The Long Hunt of April Savage at the same time they were doing The Cage.
There's an April Savage in Have Gun Will Travel as well.
Oh, okay. Being the Have Gun fan you are, I know. But he insisted that Robert Lansing be the lead, and it was going to be for ABC, and they never liked him, and they ordered Gene to recast it, and he ignored
probably
him.
Was a pain in the ass.
And they loved the show, but that's why it wasn't picked up.
Well, the trouble is that sometimes you get these actors who are amazing, and this goes for anything. If you are a diva and a pain in the ass, they're going to get rid of you. And
unless you're like a Carol O'Connor or a Red Fox that can.
And the same goes for Gene.
Yeah,
Gene was a pain in the ass, and I don't think they didn't enjoy working because he fought with them all the time.
So did you know? So I heard this story right from the horse's mouth. Finally, they basically pulled the plug on. They finished it, but they basically pulled the plug on it. And in Gene, they were on location filming that Long Hunt of April Savage with Robert Lansing. and Herb Solo was co-producing it.
Oh, he threw him off the. No, wait. Harv
And
Bennett.
he was ignoring their phone calls and telegrams and all of this. And they finally sent a poor junior executive from ABC out from New York to go out in the location and tell Gene.
Was it Harv Bennett?
It was Harv Bennett.
He threw him off the stage, I heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's no way to win friends and influence people. You know, I mean, just like
the people 20 years later or whatever that are.
If you weren't Beatty, you could get away with that stuff. I was on Dick Tracy. I came down the stage. Dick Silbert, the production designer, who is royalty, Hollywood royalty, is standing there, and I'm standing next to him. And they say, I hear Warren say, "Okay, do it again. Take 42." And it was a complex shot, people crossing in front of each other. And I looked at Dick Silbert and I said, 42 takes? And he says, there's suits here from Disney. That's Warren showing them that he'll do whatever he wants. And he said, you should have been on Reds. He said, he did 72 takes. But if you're Warren Beatty, you get away with that.
I was going to say, we're not talking about Nick Meyer making Shatner do whatever, 74 takes. The "Here It Comes" line, you know, he couldn't get, he wanted it to be small. And
well, he sure got it perfect.
He says, I just wore him down. After a few takes, he realized he wasn't going to do what I wanted. So, you know, and I think it was the right choice, at least all these years later. It looks like it was.
I think so.
Let's see. This is okay. I'm going to be real mean to you, Doug. Here's one to go out the door. Rose is in, yeah. What was your fondest memory of Star Trek?
There are so many many fond memories. But I mean, if I was just, and I could talk all day about amazing things that happen, which you're only supposed to get one to a customer, but I've gotten dozens and dozens and dozens. But I mean, I remember I was on the Enterprise C, yesterday's Enterprise, on the bridge, and the ship was a wreck, and I'm putting blood on people and stuff like that. And I turn around, and Gene Roddenberry's sitting in a tall director's chair watching me work. That was mind blowing. And then later on, I was standing by the craft service table, and the second AD came over and said, "Are you Doug Drexler?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "Mr. Roddenberry would like to speak to you." And I actually had to report to Gene Roddenberry on the bridge of the Enterprise D so that he could tell me what a great job I did on Dick Tracy. That's pretty crazy. But I mean, I swear to you, there's so many mind-boggling, crazy, fond memories. It's you know, I mean, you have to also, of course, remember that I've been working on Star Trek in some way for like 22 years or something like that, I guess, if you can, you know. I mean, I am just the luckiest guy you can imagine. Just the luckiest.
I know how you feel at sometimes, not nearly as many as you do. So this is a new name in our chat. Dennis is from the Netherlands. And he said, this may be one of those stories, was there ever a painting or a taping accident that happened on a miniature right before filming that made it not fit for filming? And if you did, what happened next?
Well, I think that was that you talked about the model catching fire.
Oh.
That's always could really put a crimp in your day.
Shields. Okay.
Get your marshmallows and your sticks.
Well, now I ask you this on the run, but he also is saying, so do you have a timeline for your book?
Or is it when it's going to be done?
Yeah, get it done when it's done.
Well, it's not taking as long as I thought. You know, whether or not anyone wants to publish it is a whole other story. And ultimately, I might just have to do it myself. I mean, Mike Westmore, you know, for his book Makeup Man, he said he's had like 20 rejections for that book. You know, but yeah, it's going great, and it's really been good for here. It's really been good for my brain.
Well, I mean, I could see it being very therapeutic, but it's good to get all that stuff out, and you start going back through, and you remember all the cool stuff that's been put back. Let's see. Oh, okay. Not to maybe open up a hornet's nest here, but Stingray says, "Well, why was Blood Chrome not continuing?
Well, it sure should have. It was an awesome show. And what happened was we had a guy in charge of sci-fi. I think his name was Mark Stern. He loved the show. But, excuse me, talking for 2 hours is starting to run out. He moved out. He went someplace else. And they brought in, Universal sometimes is like people climbing the corporate ladder. They're going someplace else and they're passing through. And as they move in, they say, well, here's the shows I want to do. I don't care what Joe Blow ahead of me had on the production slate. That doesn't mean anything to me anymore. So Mark Stern loved Blood and Chrome, wanted us to do it. We did it. It turned out great. Just as he was leaving, and someone else came in and said, we're not going to do space shows anymore. I think we're going to do wrestling for a while.
It works so well for UPN.
Oh, my God. That was a huge, huge mistake. Huge mistake.
Let me see here. What's it? Oh, and here's a totally different tone here since we're in the chat. Here's a thank you for after Dorothy passed. Your public grieving was very healing for many of us who've also lived. So
thank you. No, I know a lot of people that meant a lot to. People were writing me on the side, and what was surprising was I didn't realize how startling it was. It never even occurred to me. I just did what came natural.
Well, that's you, Doug. That's you plunging ahead for everything and not, yes. And here's JR saying the same thing, that it was heartwarming and people were jealous, even in her past.
Hey, you know what? No kidding around. I was suicidal for about 6 months. Really. The love of my life was just ripped away. Just when we were on the verge of, relaxing and doing stuff, and I think I once alluded, I didn't say I was going to kill myself, but I said something about how I'd lost my fear of death. I really did. That was one of the weird things after Dorothy died, and I watched her die for 14 months. I utterly lost my fear of death. And it was liberating and frightening at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think I put that on my page. The next thing I knew, Facebook was contacting me, asking me if I was thinking of killing myself. And well, yes, I had been thinking of killing myself. I never did it. You know why? Because of that bird. He's right over here. The parrot, my parrot.
Right. It's in this little box on a shelf full of boxes.
What, the parrot?
No, the thinking of death. Well, the parrot's in the box over here. Sure.
I think that he saved me because I was worried about what would happen to him.
Yeah.
But I really didn't want to go on, honestly.
Yeah. Well, there's comments here like Dave saying he's very touched, and Adrian saying, "We love you, Doug. You're a treasure."
Oh, thank you, Adrian.
Okay. Here's a vote for audio. Yes, it's. Let's see. I've really. Oh no! What is this? Here's another one I'm jumping into. The dual truck roar was used on the last episode with Garth Knight and Goliath over on Knight Rider. When Goliath drives over the cliff, it roars.
Well, it was probably in a Universal sound library. They're both Universal, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like that. What's the scream that they use? There's been a whole documentary about the scream, huh?
Wilhelm.
Yeah, the Wilhelm scream.
Wilhelm scream. It's fun introducing to someone like I like Dorothy. I gave her. She became a geek. She was not, believe me, before me, but she started seeing all the fun, cool things, and I taught her about the Wilhelm scream and showed her all the, as a matter of fact, you go on YouTube and type in Wilhelm scream and people have spliced every single one together over the last 60 years, you hear it all over the place.
Here's an actual NX. My question is, when it was the NX02 Columbia to design, were there any plans to have it as the refit version? Did you have the refit version thought out by the time the last season and they had the Columbia?
I didn't finalize the design on the refit till I was on Battlestar Galactica.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
As far as the writers were concerned, they weren't even writing for a fourth season, because they knew it wasn't going to. And I had talked it
fifth season.
Fifth season. That's right. Manny Cotto. When I was designing the ship, I always designed it with the idea that a secondary hull would be added later, so that fans would have the thrill of seeing a ship evolving before their eyes. If we had started with a secondary hull, you couldn't have done that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when people look back on it, they go, "Oh my God, you had an idea for this all along." And so while I was doing it, I was putting a secondary hull under it just to make sure it all, you know. So, I mean, I had talked to Manny about it. He loved the idea, but we just never got a chance to even explore it. So, I mean, as far as the writers having ideas about Columbia being a refit, you know, they probably never even got that far.
Okay, I really feel like I need to wrap up and let you go, and I'll
I got to do a couple of things.
I feel bad for your voice. I didn't mean to.
Oh no, I love talking.
Like, I knew that. I knew that. What was that post the other day? I could talk 4 hours.
I swear.
Not gonna
Give
do
me a
that.
microphone. I'll do 4 hours.
Oh my God!
I'm getting a birthday greeting from Susan. Yes, I'm going to be 70 on March 28th. Mm-hmm. 70.
We can do a week early happy birthday. Here's a Robert Lansing note from Duralta from Germany. In a movie called Otto Man alongside Desi Arnaz.
You know, I never saw it, but you know, I saw that Lansing was not getting offered the best roles after a while, and I'm sure that he had no choice to take whatever came along. You know, because when you get a name for yourself as being difficult or whatever, you know, it can impact your whole career. And a lot of people who do tend to be divas for some reason don't realize that, or they think, well, I've got to fight for what I think is, well, you might not work. You know, you got to find another way to get your way.
I think we've known some really brilliant minds, and some of them have worked on Star Trek, that creatives, I should say. Everybody's a brilliant mind, but people who, and I say this about fans too, if there's friction, sometimes it's too much love. Lieutenant, even too much love isn't always a good thing. Yeah. And it's like, and then that team approach where you said you have to swallow you fight for your position, but at some point you got to know where you are on the ladder.
Well, at some point you have to realize who's paying you.
Right.
They don't pay you to come in and they want you to do your best job, but they're paying you, and your job is to focus their vision blended with your own.
Yeah.
You can't fight with them. They're going to win.
Well, I was going to say, I know some people that have done that, and then they regret it later, but they get carried away in the moment of the, you know, my ideas, come on, how can you not see this? And it's like, well, maybe they are wrong, and maybe history will prove you right, but do you want to eat next week?
Yeah. I mean, and listen, you're not, by working for someone who, like, since when was that wrong? You know, you're hired by somebody to do a job that, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Casting pearls before swine. They're not always going to get what it is you're trying to do. And I will tell you that there have been times where I thought they were making a mistake by making me change something, and later on thought, you know what? You know, Herman was right, or, you know, Dave Blass was right. He was right. And I kind of missed it because I was so wrapped up in what I'm doing. You want people like Dave or Herman who have a clear, they're not, you could get snow blindness working on something.
Well, the overall.
Yeah, you need someone to come in and see it more clearly than you're actually seeing it.
Yeah. Well, listen, Doug, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for, I've only been having guests. This is like normally my little essay, and then we do chat. And I've only had guests just the last 2 or 3 months here. So just in time for my 300th. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me today. And
well, it's mutual. And, you know, I hear what you say about this lightning in a bottle effect. I mean, I'm hoping that
I hope
it doesn't
not
have to be the last, but
I hope not. It's just that, like I said, it's a perfect storm. You got to get the right elements back together again. You know, Dave and Terry both wanted people that they didn't have to explain what everything was. You know, and then they wouldn't get it anyway.
Which goes two ways. Well, you guys are sitting there thinking you just want to deal with people that get it from your perspective, and you forget that when you get the right people in, the Daves and the Terrys want the same thing. Going the other way. They don't want to have to. Yeah. It's like Gene dealing with his writers in the original series. You know. The
That's
sci-fi
the whole
guys who
story
can't
right
write a
there.
script, and the script guys who don't know sci-fi, and it was this.
Well, and then you bring in, and I love the idea that Gene brought in real science fiction novelists, but they can be really hard to work with, and they don't understand.
Ted Stern. I mean, they couldn't wrap their arms around a 60-minute script, so or whatever.
And they could be divas as well. I love Harlan Ellison, but look at him. And if you haven't, I'm sure you've seen the documentary on Harlan, Dreams with Sharp Teeth, on Amazon. Awesome. I love him. Go. He's a troublemaker, bomb thrower.
I'm gonna stop with this because even if we don't get the exactness that we still have the love that Ships of the Line brings us.
Do you know how long I've been editing the Ships of the Line?
Well, this was you put this 2011 in. Is that the first one?
Oh no, it goes all the way back to like 1999 or something.
Oh, I didn't realize you were in charge of that for that long.
I started on it. I wasn't like Mojo and Rob did it for the first few years, and then I ended up. Simon & Schuster asked me to take it over, probably the second season of Enterprise. And I've been doing it ever since. So I was like editing this thing for like 20 years. It's amazing. And they don't bother me. They let me do pretty much anything I want. I don't do a lot of stuff from the new shows, not because I have anything against them, but because if you do art for the Ships of the Line calendar that is based on shows that are currently in production, it's like a minefield. They will nitpick and give you notes like you're getting paid a lot of money or something, and really everyone on the calendar just gets barely enough money to make it worthwhile money-wise. Do it for love.
Can I say that most of the people that buy the Ships of the Line calendar aren't missing those ships?
Well, I mean, listen, when the first JJ thing came out, Tobias Richter did an Enterprise from the JJ movies. And that thing, it was the first time we did anything from any of the new stuff. During the Berman era, they didn't look at that. It was anything we wanted to do. It was much freer. But then when the JJ thing happened, Tobias got so many notes. It was a beautiful page, right out of off the. But everyone's so afraid, that JJ isn't gonna, and I'm afraid of what he's gonna say about this, and move it 3 pixels over here. And I finally said, I got JJ's email address, and I sent him the page myself, and I said, "Hi JJ, do you see anything wrong with this?" He goes, "No, that's awesome." I said, "Would you mind putting that in writing so that I could give this to the people over at Bad Robot?" And he did. And they didn't bother me about it again. But after that,
middlemen,
after that, we totally. I feel pretty good about us being able to do Picard season 3 in the calendar next year.
Yeah,
because Terry's going to love that, and he's not going to nitpick me over stuff because he loves the work. If he has doubts about a ship or something, he calls Mike or me or something.
That's what I'm saying. He has you in the think tank.
Yeah.
That's why you're aboard her.
Exactly. Well, all right. I'm going to go.
Yep. I was going to say, there's our goodbye.
I will see you guys. Again. It was great hanging out with you. And we'll do it again.
I'll see you fairly soon at the Yuri's night, I think.
Oh, yeah. Are you going to be there?
Yes, I will.
Cool.
And Janet's supposed to be with me too, so yay! So our coming out. So there we go. Okay, everybody, hang on, and everybody's saying bye to you, and thanks again. All righty. Well, that was different. Another format breaker, everybody. I think I got to the end of the chat here for Doug. So I had a questionnaire survey. I had some other stuff to do, but I just thought we should just go with it. So we got the Blu-ray given away. Congratulations, Justin. And wow, that was 2 hours of Doug. And yeah, Doug's one that you can get going. And we covered a lot of ground. Wasn't quite as in the weeds as a Portal 47 telebriefing guest night, but we covered a lot of modern ground too, which is what I wanted to do. So Thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks for making 300. Thanks for everybody who's going over and subscribing on my YouTube. And if you haven't, please do. And we discovered something on YouTube that there's a setting where you can hide your subscriptions, which I get it. Some people might want that for privacy, but when you're trying to get people to subscribe and you're having a drawing to encourage that, and you can't tell who's already subscribed at times, it was, as I pointed out to a few people. So thank you for all the love over on the YouTube channel. Thank you for all the love for Second Opinion. Thank you. Thank you, Scott and Kyle too, for pointing me that way. I knew we needed to do something besides even 30 minutes edited for this on a normal week is still more for the YouTube mentality sometime. And a lot of the world, rightly or wrongly, a lot of the world looks at YouTube numbers. And I was so late getting in the game with that. I look at some of these channels that have 150, 500,000, and they're just blathering. And, so, much less the old ones that were toxic and negative and didn't know what they were talking about. But even they've been kind of replaced by a lot of generic, just cranking it out stuff. So I love having the challenge to subscribe for some actual, some positive and well-researched, and I was there kind of YouTube. So thanks, everybody. It's been a big Tuesday today. We've been off format today. I'm going to save some things for next week. There's been some basically, not just the paired analytics, but some of the in-house reporting for a site called Flix Report. I've gone blank. And also Paramount Plus and Amazon Prime's, which carries Paramount Plus, are all showing that Picard is a huge, huge hit. It's like the number 3, number 4 series that's showing up on the Amazon Prime window of everything they carry in the last week or so. So Picard's doing really well. And I'll be talking about that this weekend on another Second Opinion. I'm going to hold over a questionnaire. If you're not on my mail list at LarryNemecek.com, get over there too. I did a newsletter last week that I must have been the wrong time to send it out because I didn't have near as many replies. So we may refresh that and try again with some of the things I was talking about Doug with today. The big picture of streaming and what that means for Paramount Plus and what that means for the Trek franchise and the shows that are on the runway that we know are in development and how long we may have to wait for Terry to get another series for exactly some of the reasons that we were talking about with Doug. But again, congratulations, Justin. I still have some things to mail out for some past winners. I'm going to get all of them done this week. We'll see about that. And thanks everybody for being here. I just want to say, I haven't had a chance to yet, but we've even had some new folks this week. So thank you. If you're enjoying this, we're not going to go to an all guest format, but maybe once a month have a guest. And I've already got the next guest lined up. Authors is a great place to go here. I never want to take away what is special about Portal 47. So I want that and that's a business, and I want to keep that for the Portales. But there's a lot of gaps. And then Trek Files is a very particular, it's a podcast, but there's a very particular guest spectrum for the Trek Files. And there's a gap that I haven't been servicing. And so we're going to try to move into that with Trek Files. And these folks have been helpful for that. And if you want to join them, jump over to my Patreon. But so once again, I want to thank our ongoing and some of our new Portales here, our TTLers, I should say, our Patreoners. So thank you, Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, and Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, congrats, Justin, Glinda Bruton, Chris Jiggins, Pranikasha Productions, Ryan, Mona Mijas, and Andrew Zimsky, and yes, our TTL live wires, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Hubbard Gunn Johnson, Alan Hohensi, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, welcome, and Casey Shafsky. Seriously, if you're curious, I have a very simple Patreon, patreon.com/Trekland Live, $5, $10 a month. I keep it simple. It's a shout out every week. And now, yes, we do have the delivery system finally for getting the first generation of Portal 47 behind the scenes interviews with folks. All the Star Trek you had no idea about. Even for Trek fans that have been around the block. And elsewhere around Trekland, I don't have the special card here, but oh boy, we started season 10 this week. We're not only back from hiatus, we did it in a big way. Jonathan Frakes is our guest to kick off season 10, and we're talking about directing all the way from The Offspring, his first gig, all the way up to the Picard series. It was delight, and we did it live. We didn't do Zoom. We did it at the studio at Roddenberry HQ. It was great. So Trek Files is back for season 10. We've got Jonathan to kick it off, and of course the documents are there at the Facebook page. So, hashtag talk about that if you would like to. Love to have you at Facebook. We're still trying to develop a better community page than Facebook. So hang with us on that. But love for you to join us on the Trek Files. And of course, 9 seasons is there to get back to. Otherwise, it's Larry Nemecek at Twitter. It's Larry Nemecek's Trekland at, where you're watching now. Subscribe. Also, Instagram is a lot of fun too. Portal47.net. I've been having new folks join Portal without any special promos this year because there's so much cool Trek. And we're about to have, in the weird turf and politics of the way the real world works, with Picard done, and as soon as they finish airing, we'll have a whole slew of current creatives who are happy to be guests on Portal, maybe on Trek Files as well. And there's still an army of folks out there from the prior year's seasons too. So if anything, we're finally going to be starting to hit our stride, hopefully before the memory well runs dry with these folks, about all the lovely behind the scenes folks who really made Star Trek the Star Trek that you're enjoying, to one degree or another, to one flavor of another. So thanks for all that. I'm just going to say thanks, everybody, we got pretty much to the chat. I'll make one. This has been a very special one, so I want a big shout out to Scott, who helped not just with the graphics here, but a soundboard here as we work through all this, and Kyle, who's helping with the editing. If you've noticed the lift here on the video side of things. Live action is coming back. So I mentioned to Doug, Yuri's Night, which is April 8th. Here in LA, there's a Yuri's Night around the world at some places. I think there's a couple more. I think New York, I think the Space Coast has a Yuri's Night. You can check that out at Yuri's Night LA, whatever.com. It's going to be a site on my page at LarryNemecek.com. If you're not on my list, you should, because I'm going to update about that too. But also this Friday night, Star Trek, to promote the launch of Strange New Worlds, this Blu-ray season 1, and how popular Strange New Worlds was. The great Dr. Aaron McDonald, science advisor to all the current Star Treks, is leading a trivia night at Scum and Villainy here in Hollywood. I'm going to go over, be a fun little night. But then the day after that, this is WonderCon weekend in Anaheim. WonderCon's kind of the junior brother to big San Diego Comic-Con, and I've got a panel. If anyone's going to be at WonderCon, I have a panel from 5 to 6 about like tips and tricks for you as you do your own location research and trekking around. Of course, we have the Trekland Treks, and I work with Terrace on Geek Nation Tours for the big multi-day location tours, which are a ton of fun. And we'd love to have you join that. I'd love to have you do a day tour with me on a Trek sometime. Let me know. Get in touch with me. We'll work it out. We just did the very special ones for the cruisers going to the cruise back and forth. So that's all exciting. And thank God we're opening up smartly and able to enjoy things like that again. And then we've got the summer coming up. I'm going to be in 2 weeks. I'm going to be end of the month at Lake Charles, Louisiana, down at SciFicon for the first time in several years. So looking forward to seeing everybody down in Cajun country again, from Houston over to New Orleans and up north. I love Lake Charles, and it's been a while since we've been there. So looking forward to that too. So what a week. Got Jonathan on the 10th season premiere of Trek Files, and Doug here on 300 episodes of Trekland Tuesdays Live. Just get on Facebook, Larry. Just get on Facebook Live and just do something. And here we are today. So thanks everybody for joining us. Hope you enjoyed Doug. I know the picture wasn't great. We're still investigating why guests are having issues coming on here, which is disappointing, I know, but hopefully the brilliance and the light and a subtle picture that is Doug shown through there. And we will see you next week, folks. So, do all the things, everybody. Stay healthy. even whatever is going on wherever you are. And stay woke. By that, I mean eyes wide open and check the sources. That goes both ways. And truck well, everybody. Thanks so much for 300. We'll see you for 301 next week.